this conference. Now, I would like to bring the president of AmTam Chile, Guillermo Cari, who is here with us, so please give a round of applause for him. Good morning, everyone. For us, it's a pleasure to be here today. I would like to thank everyone of Corfo and Imagen de Chile, and both national and international guests. When I was preparing the words to welcome you here, I thought of a question. Why is AmCham here? And with two or three reflections, I'm going to try to explain this. First, because of biotechnology, because today the different actors, different political sectors recognize the importance of giving added value to what we already have in order to improve copper, the industry, and biotechnology is in the center of that and is both for this government and past governments. Corfo has been promoting this initiative, and we know that the sector is growing 30% annually. 25% of every authorization presented in Chile for Chilean entrepreneurship are Chilean. With Becas Chile, we are increasing human capital by 30% in biotechnological field. The amount invested by the governments are around 50% to biotechnology. And when we see the relevance and importance that we could achieve as a country to the added value of our products, we believe that as Chamber, this is a place where we can contribute to a topic of the country, and we have the biotechnological sector. The second reason, and I believe that Soledad said it, that topics of the future. So many times when we talk about future topics in Chile are already a reality in other countries, especially in the United States. So if we believe that as Chamber, we had a lot to say when it came to connecting points of what is happening in the United States and the experiences of them with ours, the Chamber traditionally is the receptor of multinationals and represented the interests of multinational companies, especially American ones in Chile. But a few years ago we said, okay, no, the world is becoming flat and we need to help connecting dots in both ways. And this is why the team recently began developing a program that we said that is loop no, and we have focused ourselves in the world of biotechnology. And for this, Corfo has been a fundamental part with their program, and the team of AmTam Chile has made great progress. And in 2015, we carried out 2 biotechnological missions for medical affairs in Boston and Washington, which was greatly successful. We gathered investors and other organizations in order to create a challenge that was look north, and we got together in local seminars. We've carried out a boot camp when it comes to biotechnological issues, where we brought biohealth and biotechnological groups that have supported us and communicate their experiences. And we are here today promoting the second conference with a focus in what are the steps that for local entrepreneurs that are going to the United States, and how can that help by sharing experiences. And you can see with the speakers that we have today that they will shed a light on something that it seems so complicated. Therefore, for this relationship with the United States and the best practices that we can bring, we believe that this is a great way of contributing. And third, and this is more macro when it comes to the Chamber, but A lot of us here believe that this has been an excellent experience, an opportunity to create an alliance for public and private sector. Miriam recently said that, but for us as Chamber, we represent more than 600 partners. In every sector, there is a deep calling to cooperate, to contribute, and to make a better country. And what better way than to create public and private alliances? For us, has been an honor and a pleasure to have the support of Corfo, the support of Imagen de Chile Foundation, because it's been a really significant relationship. It has meant dialogue, and there are so many of us here that we have generated relationship, important ones, in a moment that the country is so divided for the elections and there is a lack of confidence. We are trying to build trust in public and private alliances that are so important for Chile and for AmCham, so are very important. I would like to make a recognition for the work, endless work of everyone who organized this event, because I'm very happy to see people that would work together and that you almost consider them as friends. And I would like to make a brief recognition to the group of AMFAM that is trying to organize these events and see the relevance of these topics, and a very important recognition to Lorena Palomo, who has been the inspiration of AmCham, and we are deeply thankful of her. So with this welcome words, I would like to present the next speakers and thank all of you, and to make a reflection that it is very important that you are here, because these issues really move the country, and if we continue creating confidence and bridges, we will be able to come forward with this topic.
No conference which I do not go to. There's no presentation where we not speak about the importance and the public-private alliance or partnership. And the interesting thing is to see this, to see the fruits, the results that's going to have in the development of our country. This is why we will invite to the floor the Executive Vice President of Corfo, Mr. Eduardo Vitruan, who is going to have a lecture for us today. Welcome, Eduardo. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to this conference. I'd like to thank our partners in this program, AmCham, Guillermo Keri, Imagen de Chile, Miriam Gomez. It's been a long road for 2 years. It's been quite interesting. I'd like to start with the last part that was mentioned by Guillermo. Innovation in countries requires collaboration. Innovation does not just happen in an isolated manner. It's a systemic process. We have to press many keys simultaneously for things to happen. More and more when we talk about innovations that transform the country. And collaboration in different fields requires trust. It requires venture capital, social capital. And our country effectively in the last years has suffered a crisis of confidence, a crisis of trust from the population, the trust that they have in their institutions and policies, in companies. And that has consequences. It has consequences that can be quite complex. It has consequences in terms of the risk of political polarization, but also the consequences in a field that is more ours, the field that we work in, is that we're not able to generate the minimum spaces of agreement to be able to make progress in innovation. Within this context, Corfo proposed itself in 2014 to conduct efforts to promote innovation, generating spaces of dialogue between the entrepreneur or the company area, experts, academics or scholars, state stakeholders or agents, and representatives of civil society. And we structured these programs, these strategic programs that we have called intelligent specialization, strategic programs of intelligent specialization, not with the aim to seek for, sometimes we say, not just to pick winners or picking winners. Basically, what we have said is that Chile has certain advantages that has to do with their natural resources. It has certain sectors that are not that has certain significant productivity gaps. And if Chile wants to continue growing, we have to be able to increase the total factor productivity, the growth of productivity. We have TFP quite stagnant for 17 years, and that's the fundamental factor that allows us to grow in a more rapid manner. Therefore, within a context of disruptive technological, the way in which the country is able to absorb these technologies and to make use of them to generate endogenous innovative dynamics, we have to do this with a certain focus. And let's start, obviously, by those fields in which Chile is big, is important now. Let's start with mining. Let's start with the entire sector of agribusinesses, food, the food industry. We're quite large at a world level or global level in those fields. And others. Chile has very important needs to progress in productivity and in education. And what are those big technological revolutions that are accelerating in the last years? There's no doubt that digital revolution, the Internet of Things, big data, is a field that is changing the productive paradigms in many sectors, actually. But we also have biotechnology, nanotechnology, two areas in which, given the structure of comparative advantages that Chile has, we could have large impacts while we're able to apply this in an intelligent manner in terms of sustainability, in terms of productivity, innovation, new products that are more sophisticated. Therefore, along with attracting to the work the different quite relevant stakeholders of the Chilean economy, we said, okay, we have to work in a systematic manner in country strategies, in these technological platforms, disruptive platforms for the exchange rate that they're suffering, that will affect in a positive and negative manner in the competitiveness of the key sectors of our economy. And that is how we propose our initiative for digital transformation. We call it Intelligent Industries. And 1.5 years later, we launched this biotechnologic strategy. And we invited Dr. Fernando Martinez, who was heading an institute in the University of Arizona within the field of biotechnology. He had been quite successful in linking the world of research with the needs of business. When we conducted some hypotheses of the issues that we faced, we thought that was a key subject, because Chile has many publications in the biotechnology field. We have a percentage of scientific research that is invested in this area, which is quite significant. But we do not have a history in which biotechnology has generated transforming impacts in productive sectors of our economy. And in other countries, biotechnology has generated enormous wealth. When we were in the National Council for Innovation, we invited provost from Cornell University, who was heading the research in San Diego, and he was commenting how San Diego went from being a military base with beautiful beaches to being the center for the emergence of biotechnological companies in the United States, and how the link between the university and businesses was a fundamental, critical subject to generate those growth dynamics. Therefore, the work that was initiated by Fernando with our teams from the management of Marcela Angulo, the management of technological capacities, we called it an IFI, just a tool of integrated promotion that allows to hire very competent teams that convene the stakeholders of the ecosystem. It's quite significant and profound work with Imagen de Chile Foundation and with AmCham, but also with many other stakeholders from universities, from venture capital, from companies. We went into depth on the link with a partnership that was done in the previous government with Chile, Massachusetts, and we created the Chile Mass Tech Bridge. And we also linked to the European Union. We conducted great efforts, and today we're the only entity for the promotion of innovation in Latin America that is integrated to the Eureka network, where the large innovation institutions of the European Union are, in addition to partners such as Canada, Korea, and now Chile. Therefore, the initial mandate for this work team was to have clarity in diagnosis. What are we lacking? What is impeding? What is stopping us from generating this bridge between scientific research and the applications that have productive impact? We have a background of thinking strategically in biotechnology issues. When in 2002, the human genome was discovered, that was a global revolution. Do you remember? What did we do? It was the government of President Lagos. He convened us, different stakeholders. I was in Fundación Chile. We had Álvaro Díaz, who was Undersecretary of Economy, I remember. And they proposed a biotechnological strategy, because this technology, sequencing, genomes, proteomics, it's going to change everything. That's why we created a strategy. And what was the basis of that, or the foundations of that strategy? To significantly invest in capacities, but focused capacities. Let's say scientific research with a purpose. And the purpose was to address the challenges in mining, fruticulture, forestry, salmoniculture as well. And after a couple of years, we currently see, we bear the fruits of those efforts. There is a program for genetic improvement or enhancement, 2 programs in salmons with quite noticeable results. We see interesting outcomes for the first time in the development of varietals in the fruit industry in Chile. But with regard to the resources that we have invested, the results are insufficient. So we have to reach more, we have to go for more. That's why we had to renew the strategical diagnosis with a long-term vision. And for us to be able to give the authorities, the upcoming authorities, because we knew this, we were starting 2016, the end of 2015, we were not going to implement much, but we were going to generate an enormous social capital and a vision that is shared of what we had to do in the future in Additionally, from animating the dynamic entrepreneurship ecosystem in collaboration with AmCham and other stakeholders for entrepreneurs in this field to have opportunities. The diagnosis is clear. It is disseminated. We are lacking scaling up capacities in the field of biotechnology. It is not possible to validate, to solve the information asymmetries that there are between who invests and that person that has the technology with regard to the value of the technology that is created. That is a problem. That stops private investment. And it stops the generation of more resources for sciences because there's no impact. Because they are papers. Okay, yes, they increase our scientific productivity, but our the academic world, our country, is demanding these are relevant stakeholders in the challenge of transformation, of transforming this country. Because if not, we're not going to converge into a developed country. That is why we have to forget about this tension between the jumbling vision of university and the vision of the university that's also committed with the development of our country. There are no standards in research that allow us to conduct traceability. Therefore, have definite and clear conclusions with regard to what we're able to conclude. Human capital in bio businesses, it's exiguous. In my personal case, when we decided that Fundación Chile was to enter this in 1997, we had to import from the human capital, the specialists in bio businesses from the United States. In Chile, there was no one that we could hire, at least. Funding lines are not adapted to the needs of the sector. And the most complicated matter is that the regulation of this country is anti-systemic in the sense that it goes against progress that is happening at an international level. Law Ricarte Soto had some requirements that make it almost impossible for the development of clinical trials in our country. And how? Where are we going to develop the clinical trials? Where are we going to conduct them? That hampers research enormously. We have historical problems or issues with the genetic engineering. Well, happily today we have new technologies that allow us to modify without transgenia, and that facilitates enormously. And the program has a success. The program was able to put on the table a fruitful dialogue with the regulatory entities. And Chile is going to be one of the first countries in Latin America that is going to be able to regulate the new ways of modifying that do not involve transgenia and make them feasible to be able to conduct proper research. What is the fundamental challenge that we have in the future to solve this broken bridge that we have between research and business? And what we will propose today, we will extensively propose the creation of a platform, translational platform that allows to solve the gaps, the existing gaps between the worlds of science, formulation, research projects, and the needs of the business world, in order to generate a type of capacity that allows to merge both worlds. And this is an additional challenge. When we conducted the program, we created the program in 2003 and onwards, the entire infrastructure of biotechnology was supported by the researchers. It's not a shared service as it happens in countries where they try to maximize the use of their scarce resources. And Chile has enormous scarce resources, enormous needs. Therefore, I have set this challenge that this translational platform at the same in turn has to be able to generate new models of sharing scientific technological infrastructure that is available for everyone. That implies thinking in service centers for technological scientific research that are shared with the technicians that are conducting the operations, not with the scientists that are using it 10% of the time, and the rest of the time is just left there. Those are challenges. We expect, and I will make the commitment when we have the new authorities, to propose this institute or this center or this platform as a priority. We still have yet to expand the production of lithiums of Albemar. We are negotiating the new quota. That's where we have different scholarships that will go to research and development, and these will be reserved for the creation of this platform. It will be the decision of the new authority to decide, oh, okay, yes, we will go for this. Therefore, it is quite important, it is critical for there to be a shared vision and social capital for this to be continuous. Thank you very much. Eduardo, please stay with us here. We would like to invite Eduardo, Guillermo, and Miriam to the floor because we're lacking an official picture of the three of you. By taking the words of Eduardo Vidal and especially the challenges that are proposed when establishing these bridges between the company and the academy and these relevant or critical issues that we're talking about. Please smile. We would like to save this picture for later. Thank you very much. Thank you for participating with us in this photography. I told you that I could not ask you to shut your cell phones off because we're quite connected today with technology. With networks are quite important in seminars like this, and we also have the possibility to transmit this through streaming. And for those that have been checking, have been commenting, I'd like to tell you that we'd like to invite you to follow through the following Twitter accounts the activity that is conducted today. And after the information that is left there, one account is at Chile Global Bio _bio. You can tag it there. You also have Marca Chile and at AmCham Chile. Those are the pages you can tag. And we have the fan page in Facebook, and you can use the hashtag Conferencia Biotec. Actually, if you put it in Twitter, Conferencia Biotec, all the accounts that I just mentioned will appear. The encounter is also being transmitted through streaming through the website chileglobal.biotech.cl. We have been greeted through there, so I'd like to greet everyone that is connected through streaming. And I'd like to thank you for participating in this event. Now, before presenting our first foreign guests, I'd like to tell you that the courtesy bags that you have here in your power and that you received at the start of the event, and there is a book with the information about the different lecturers that are coming here with us today. They're here with us today in a space. Well, here in this printed agenda, you can also put your questions for the panelists who we'll talk to later about Chile Global. And we will gather all these questions that you have while the program is conducted, which is called the Science Challenges and Perspectives. That's the name of the seminar. Considering the areas that we will address today. Therefore, if you want to revise that, it's available. There is a document where you can write down your questions. Questions are just for the panel. When we have 10 minutes a panel, I will tell you to please raise your hands, and then we could revise those consultations. I'd like to invite the first speaker, the president of Schaffner Law Office. He's a specialist lawyer in corporate investments, Mr. Samuel Schaffner. In the United States, he conducted an important task supporting startups with venture capitals and strategic capitals, and he advises funds that are ventured with innovative ideas. And Samuel also helps great international public companies to structure their divisions of strategic venture capital. This is to monitor developments with high potential within the respective commercial sectors. It is a great honor to have here with us today Mr. Schaffner with a lecture, Raising Capital for Entrepreneurs in Life Sciences. The presentation will be conducted in English. There is simultaneous interpretation in case you need anyone that needs simultaneous interpreting devices. You could please let us know so you can use it. Please try to use the content of this activity in the interpretation. I'd like to have a big round of applause for Mr. Samuel Schaffner.
Hello? Let's see. Okay. Can everyone hear me all right? Put this out of the avoid the feedback. There seems to be a reverberation or feedback. No, it's okay? Okay. So I don't speak Spanish. I'm sorry for that. Last week I was in England leading a panel of, actually leading a whole day of 5 panels on the Life Sciences Conference there. And the British said that I don't speak English. So if I don't speak Spanish and I don't speak English, I don't speak anything. Anyway, buenos dias. That's about all the Spanish I know. I'd like to give thanks to Corfo and to AmCham, to Lorena Palomo, and especially to Isadora Erazuri, did I say that right? Whose hospitality and a warm welcome has made us all feel very comfortable, and she took care of all the details. As you've heard, I'm a U.S. lawyer. I'm based in Boston. I have a national and an international practice. I've spent most of my life representing startups all over the world and representing the venture funds and corporate strategic investors who fund them. Besides being a lawyer, I also run around the world leading panels and persuading investors to come to those panels. One of the hardest ones I ever did was last year, where I helped to organize Chile's first international venture capital conference. Some of you may have been there, and persuaded 10 venture capital funds from the US, Canada, and Israel to come to Chile. And it was followed by, later in the year, a 3-day event in Boston where a Chilean delegation met with 19 venture funds and corporate venture strategics, as well as various Boston biotech institutions. They were both great events. And in fact, the mother and the father of those 2 events is here with us today, and I'd like to make a special recognition of them. Claudia Uribe and Francisco Santibanez, they're the mother and the father of those events, together with Eduardo Bitran and his team at Corfo, did all the real work to make those things happen and to start to put Chile on the venture capital map. I'd like to recognize them. So I'm here to help you figure out how to approach, how to find investors, how to pitch them, what they want to see from you in order to invest, and what you should expect to see from them. Now, I know we're here in Santiago, and I know you're saying to yourself, it's so far away. Why would they invest in so far away from where they live? And it is a problem. I won't conceal that from you. But you're not the first country to face it. In the 1990s, Israel was not the startup nation. It was a place on the other side of nowhere, surrounded by hostile nations. And you know how many venture funds they had? 1. Athena, if you'd even call that a venture fund. You have more venture funds than they had then. There is telecommunications, which was primitive back then. And you have much more peace here. They were a nation fully at war, and you're a leader of Latin America. They had hostile neighbors all around, and yet they were able to do it. How did they do it? How did they get American venture funds to invest there? That's a subject for another discussion, but I'll tell you that one technique that may work for some of you is to split up the companies, have the R&D in Chile, and have some of the management people in America for 2 reasons. One is, especially for the early stage investors, they like to be close to their investments so they can have face-to-face meetings. And the second is, the market that you're aiming at is probably there, not here. And it's good to be close to your market. So it's not impossible, it's difficult. But whether you approach investors there or here or in Europe or anywhere else, the techniques are largely the same, aside from this issue of how to be close to them. But after you get by that, The rest of it is the same wherever you are, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, next slide. Oh, how do I do this? That work? This? Ah, there. Which one? Okay. Oops. Good. Okay, very good. So, where are the investors hiding? Why can't I find them? How should I find them? Investors are different. Their psychologies are different. You approach them differently. Angels, angel groups, family offices, venture funds, they're all different. An angel is an individual who invests in companies. The first angels are what we in America affectionately call triple Fs: friends, family, fools, especially the last. But they're good to have, and they invest not because they really believe in what you're doing. They believe in you, or they love you, or both. And the thing about angels is they all are different. And that's very hard, because if you have 20 angels, are you going to have 20 deals, 20 valuations? What if they talk to each other? What are you going to do? And how can they efficiently invest in you? Well, it used to be in the early stages of investment, they did that. They called it private placements, highly inefficient. Then the angels started to band together, in America at least, in angel groups. We have some 15 or 20 of them in the Boston area alone, and the largest and most prestigious nationwide angel group, actually the head of it, spoke to the Chilean delegation last year that came to Boston, Hamilton Lord. So angel groups band together, and they do their due diligence together. They do their negotiation together. They hire one lawyer to draft one set of documents. It makes life a lot easier. So what's the difference between but I should add, not everybody in an angel group has to invest in every investment. It's still, they go around the group and say, who likes this investment? And they make a little summary of it. And they can invest or they cannot invest, as they please. One of the differences, one of the biggest differences between angels, whether they're angels or in angel groups, on the one hand, and venture funds on the other, is that in a venture fund, the venture fund managers have to invest in somebody. It's their job. Somebody, or several somebodies, pension funds, annuities, endowments, placed hundreds of millions of dollars with them and gave them a job. You get paid every day to go and invest this money wisely. So they can't say, I don't feel like investing. It's their job. They have to go and find you wherever they're looking. They haven't started looking in Santiago yet, but we have to teach them that. Whereas angels don't have to do a blessed thing. They're wealthy. They've made their money. They can sit on the beach all day for all you care. So when you're going to angels, what do you appeal to? Their business sense or their egos? Both, but mostly the egos. You appeal to the business sense because otherwise you would be patronizing them, and you would act like you think they're fools, which of course you do, but you don't want to act that way. So you explain it as you would to a venture capitalist, but you bear in mind that that the reason they're investing is social. And how do you appeal to their social? Because someone told you in advance all about this, like I'm telling you now, and you fill your board of advisors with thought leaders and prestigious people that they want to be associated with, thus pleasing their egos. And then you give them a slide deck that gives them financial cover so they don't look and feel like fools. That's angels. Family offices function largely like angels, but they're wealthy people that have hired professionals to manage their money for them. And those professionals either have an outlook of a venture capitalist or a professional angel, or none of the above. We don't know. Each one is different. And family offices are a particular challenge because while the family doesn't have to invest in you, the person administering the family office has to do something with the money. So it's a kind of a combination of an angel and a venture capital group, and you have to use the dynamics that you would use for both. And then we come to non-dilutive financing, which is government grants and grants from Corfo and grants from anyone else. Those are good things because they're not dilutive. In other words, you don't have to pay equity for them. What's the bad part? Among venture capitalists, they're known as crack cocaine. Why? Because there are companies that say, there's a grant I can get, and they run after it. And all right, it's not exactly what we'd planned to do, but we can get that grant. And they get it. Say, that's wonderful. Now I have a little bit of money, but now I need to go get another grant. Oh, there's another one. It's a little different. I can twist myself to get that one. Before you know it, you've forgotten what you're in business for. So non-dilutive financing is great in small measure. Don't get addicted. So then we come to venture capital funds. Venture capital funds are large aggregates of other people's money. They usually work in a variant of a 2 and 20 formula, which is the venture fund managers get 2% of the committed capital, which is how much people have said they'll invest, and they can take that out of the little bit they already have invested. And that 2% they very jealously guard. That's why you'll find most venture funds have surprisingly few people in them. Why? Because they've only got that 2% and they'd like to pocket most of it. And then the 20% is what they call the carry. That's what they get. They get 20% of what remains of the profits, if there are any, after they've paid back the investors what they invested with a certain hurdle rate. The thing about venture funds is they're professionals and it's not their money. They have to invest. They don't have to invest in you, but they have to invest in somebody. And it's our job to find the right VCs that will find you that somebody, and we're soon going to show you how to do that. The last one is corporate strategic investors. They're more important than you might think. Statistically, last year, 35 to 40% of the major venture deals in America had at least one corporate strategic investor in it. What's a corporate strategic investor? It's the venture arm of a corporation. Why does a corporation have a venture arm? Well, there's a real reason and there's an excuse. So let me tell you the excuse first. The excuse is that they want to make an investment or buy a company or find these wonderful little companies that they can't find, and they want to turn over the rocks and find them. Some of them really want to do that. But most of them, the reason is intelligence, corporate intelligence. Let me give you an example. How many of you in your cars navigate by a system called Waze? Show of hands, anyone? Okay, probably in Spanish. Waze was an Israeli company that 3 years after its founding was sold to Google for $1 billion. It's not bad. There were GPS systems called TomTom and Garmin that were practically put out of business by Waze. And they never saw it coming. Now what if, in year one, when the guy who invented, this Israeli who invented Waze, was struggling for money, as every founder inevitably does, what if then Garmin and TomTom had known about him and had come to him and had said, here, have millions, take it, please? What would have happened? They would be in business. Or if they didn't want to invest, if they said, uh-oh, look what he's doing. He's applying crowdfunding to our business. Look at the potential. And they wouldn't understand the potential, but after they saw his slide deck, maybe they would. So if they had seen his slide deck in year one, they would know to go do it themselves. And they would still be here today, which they're not. So the real reason that most corporate strategics are in it is to know things they couldn't otherwise know. And why can't they just pose as startups? Because they're not 25 years old, and they don't look 25 years old, and they're not going to fool anybody. So instead, they go with what they do have. And most corporations now have corporate strategic arms, and it wasn't that way 15 years ago. It's been steadily growing. And that's why to most of the panels that I do, I mix half corporate strategics and half venture funds. And corporate strategics and venture funds work very, very well together. Why? Because what do venture funds really know well? They really know well how to nurture a company and how much a young company is worth. What don't they have a clue about? Whether the darn thing will sell in Poughkeepsie or Valparaiso or wherever their markets are. They don't know whether it will sell, because all venture funds, no matter how narrow they are sector-wise, are still pretty general. And they don't know as much as they'll pretend to know. But they have egos, so they'll nod their heads and pretend they know what they don't know. So what they don't know is whether the darn thing will sell. And they have no way to know that. What does a corporate strategic know? He has business units. He has salesmen. He knows exactly whether the darn thing will sell. What doesn't he know? How to nurture a young company. Large corporations typically crush young companies. They don't try to. They just can't help it. And they have no clue what the thing is worth, and they're in mortal terror of their partner who wants their fellow officer who wants their job, saying, "You fool, you left money on the table." But he can say, "No, I didn't. Here, look at the VC that was in the deal with us. They know that. If they thought it was okay, it must be okay." And the VC who was assailed by his partner and said, "You fool, didn't you know this wouldn't sell in Valparaiso or Poughkeepsie?" He can say, "How would I know? The strategic who knows better than us, he said it would sell." So they really work in simpatico, as you guys would say. They really work well together. And therefore, when you pitch, it's good to pitch both of them. Oops, how do we go the other way? Oh, is that the next one? Yes. So the question, and now that we know who they are, the question is how to find them. This is what not to do. Don't send your plans indiscriminately to all the VCs, because some VCs talk to each other. They go to conferences. I organize the conferences. I know they're there. And they will say, "Oh, this ridiculous thing I got," you get a bad name. Plus, it doesn't work. So don't do that. What should you do? It's harder, but it's better. This is what you should do. How the heck do I do this? There we go. Here's what you do. It's hard work, but it's definitely worth it. The first thing you do is you sit down and you plan which investors you want to target. And you do that with help of someone like me, and that's why I do all these panels, so I develop these relationships, and so I can help my startups know who to go to and what those people really want as opposed to what they say they want. But then somebody, and I usually prefer it to be the client, has to go to those companies, go on their websites, look at their portfolio companies. They first look at their statements and say, "This is what we want to invest in," and it's typically very broad, and it's typically not true. And then you go to their portfolio companies, which they all list on their websites. All the funds do. And you see what they really invested in, and that tells you a lot. And you see where there's a gap. So either you'll see a company that looks almost exactly like yours, and then you'll have to figure out a way to persuade the VC in advance that while it may look like I'm like just like XYZ company, I'm really not because of this and this. Or you may find that they don't have a company like you. There's a gap in your portfolio, and I fill it. So you have a story, and that tells the VC something. One, you might be telling the truth. It's always possible. But in addition, at least you've taken the time to get to know them, to look at them, to do your homework. And that tells them what kind of a manager you are. And if there's one truth that you all need to know about any kind of investor, they will always prefer a good manager to a good idea. Bill Gates did not have the best computer system going, but he did pretty well. He was a great manager. A lot of it matters how well you can run a company, and people will bet much more on the jockey than on the horse. It's also good to have a good idea. It's also good to have good science, good clinicals, good data. But far more important than that is you have to be a good manager. And if you do your homework, that will be one way to show them. There are other ways, I'll get to that. But it's one way to show them that you're really good, that you're a good, careful manager. If you took that much time to figure out who to go to, then you'll take that much time running your company, hiring the right people, approaching the market the right way. It says a lot about you. So, research the portfolio companies, see who in the fund was their director. If you see a company that's in a very similar sector to you, see which venture fund manager sat on their board, and that's the guy you want to get to. Now, how do you get to him? Well, today it's a lot easier than it used to be. There's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's blogs. It's all effort, and it takes time. Now, once you've targeted who you want, not both the fund and the person within the fund, the right person, how do you get to them? It's a lot easier than it used to be. Through these social media sources and blogs and certain other resources I can show you, SEC Fund and so on, there are ways of finding out who's who, and then you want to find out who's connected to them. One of the best ways to approach a venture fund is somebody who's already made money for them. That's a really good way. Another way is through your thought leaders who you've already put on your board of advisors. And I'll show you how to do that. It's so common that I even have a template I've developed on how to deal with a board of advisors, legally, business-wise. And those boards of advisors those advisors often know people at venture funds. And then there's lawyers. Most lawyers don't have the network I do because for 15 years I've been running around the world organizing conferences and inviting venture funds to it and working with them before the panels and so on. I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anyone. Venture fund managers have egos. They really do. And they like to speak, as long as it's interesting. And I always make sure it is. Make them sweat a little bit, earn their money, but they love it. And through that, I've been able to get a great network. I can't force them to write a check, but I can coach you enough. Besides being a lawyer, I'm a coach. And I can coach you enough so that you'll have at least a good presentation, and I have enough of a network that I can probably get you in front of them. Whether they invest, that's not up to me. That's up to you. But besides me, there's accountants and others who regularly deal with them. And then there's the parasites. Watch out for them. You want to really commit career suicide? Then fall for this pitch. I'm a business broker. It's not what you know, it's who you know, and I know everybody. Don't pay me anything now, but if I find you the money, pay me a commission. Run away. When I have the panels, I ask the question that I know the answer to, but I want the audience to hear it. What do you think when someone comes with a broker? And the answer is, what, I would want 7% of my money diverted to this schmo? Or, what's the matter with this management team? They couldn't find us on their own? They also complain, oh, I've got too many deals, I'm drinking from a fire hose and all that, but that's in their mind. Don't ever use a broker. Don't ever use a finder. And how do you know them? They take a commission. Don't ever use anybody who takes a commission until you're at like stage D or stage E or selling your company. When you need to go to figures in the industry who aren't there looking for investors, then you can use a broker. But not until then. While you're still in venture mode, that's seed, stage A, stage B, stage C, don't fall for it, please. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Slide decks. There's two kinds of slide decks. One is the introductory slide deck. It's the one that you use to get the meeting. It's not the one you use when you get in the meeting. Don't use the same slide deck. A lot of people do. They shouldn't. Because what's the point? They've already read that slide deck. You're not telling them anything new. Plus, you want to have a question and answer session on this when you actually have the meeting. So the introductory slide deck is to get the meeting. And even though you or I, most likely me, will be sending the slide deck with an email, and the email will have a chance to say something about you. Half the time, the slide deck is going to go to somebody else, forwarded without the email, because the email said something chatty that they don't want their partner to see. And so the slide deck will really have to stand on its own, and it should. So the slide deck should tell your story, and it should present your business plan, and it has to do it really succinctly, because VCs have one of the shortest attention spans known to the zoological world. I think roughly equivalent to a fruit fly. Okay. And also, you don't have to say it all. You don't have to tell them everything. Leave something for the meeting. You're fishing. Chum the water. Put some bait. Get them in, tell them enough so that they know what you're about and that they know what you promise you can do. And they have a vague idea of how you're going to do it. But don't go into the science. A good slide deck should have no more than a dozen slides, and even that's pushing it. And I'll go into, in the rest of this presentation, and by the way, I'll give this, you don't have to take notes, I'll give this presentation happily to any of you. Just email me, the organizers have my email address, it's there for the asking. And then if you don't even want to do that, it's also on my LinkedIn site, so this is not a state secret, you all can have it. The next slides, which will show you what the content should be. But a lot of scientists are so happy with their science. Oh, I'm so wonderful, I made this wonderful invention, that 8 of the slide decks will be all about the science. And then they try to squeeze in the stuff the VCs really want to hear. Okay? The VCs don't only care about your science insofar as it can make them money. Okay. And the presentation slide deck is, that's what that is. I don't want to spend too much time on that, because if you get that far and you have the meeting with the good VC, you're halfway there. Because they jealously guard their time, and they're not going to give you that meeting until you're already very promising. So if you've got the meeting, give yourself a pat on the back, because you've really gotten somewhere. So what kind of slide deck do we use that will get them to be interested? So here are the first 6 slides that I would suggest. Okay, first one is an introduction, a brief statement of your company. Just briefly, do it right up front. Don't leave them guessing as to what you do. I've seen slide decks where you have to go to the 3rd or 4th slide before you figure out what kind of company this is. Are you developing a drug? Are you developing a device? Are you developing a platform for clinical trials? What the heck are you doing? Who are you? And where are you? Are you in America? Are you in Chile? Are you in both? And say that very quickly. I'm a Chilean this is a Chilean pharmaceutical company designed to develop a cure for diabetic foot ulcers through a drug. That's a good first slide. It tells them at least what they're looking at. So if they're looking for something else, they can at least stop there. Okay. The second is the market. The nature of the market and where you fit into it. And the third, which is very closely related, is competition. And everyone says, no, I don't have competition. Yes, you do. You know who your competition is? It's whoever the company would spend that part of their budget on instead of you. And don't underestimate, as many entrepreneurs do, the tax of inertia. If somebody's already spent $1 million or $10 million on a product that's not as good as yours, but they're already committed to it, it's very hard to get them to instead invest in yours. So what you want to do is to not hate your competition, but use your competition, because your competition has validated the market for you. They've done you a favor. So one of the slides I really like is called a quadrant slide. I can give you a sample of it. And it basically gives you a snapshot of the marketplace. It has like an axis, and it shows products that have more feature-rich, less feature-rich, more expensive, less expensive, and so on. And you have a dot where you are in the market and another dot where someone else is, and it lets someone see at a glance where you are in the market and why the market needs you. It's a great kind of slide. It's sort of half market and half competition. So use that slide if it's at all appropriate. Intellectual property and other relevant entry barriers are important. If you're a biotech, then you know it's going to be probably patent. Not always. Sometimes you're a generic. Sometimes you're actually a platform for use in helping other biotechs, whether it's in clinicals or whether it's in gene orientations, or there are various things that aren't drugs that fit into the area of biotech. So intellectual property is important. If you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. And by the way, patents are not the only intellectual property. Whether it's better to patent or to use a trade secret and try to keep it secret, or to be first in the market and not have so much protection, is very much a business decision. It's not a no-brainer. Because when you patent, you're telling the world all your secrets. Sometimes that's the right thing to do, sometimes not. How long will it take me to get through regulatory? Will I have enough time after that to make a profit on this? When I flip it to big pharma, which eventually most of you will do, what do they want? And they usually do want some patents. And in addition to the major patents, should I build a moat around the castle with ancillary patents? And an IP lawyer will help you do that. I myself am not an IP lawyer. I'm a poor but honest corporate lawyer, but I have relations. I have actually an affiliation with a 150 lawyer firm down south, where down South America, that is, down south in the U.S., where rates are much cheaper. And I have one of the reasons why I've gone on my own after spending most of my life with large firms is to be able to have the freedom to put you where you belong in the right places. So IP is very important, and that discussion you'll have with your IP lawyer. Okay? Regulatory qualifications, very important. Should you go first to the FDA, first to the EU? Right now you don't have very much of a regulatory regime here in Chile. It would be helpful if you did. But the question is where to go to first, expenses, that's a whole other discussion. And money has a lot to do with it. Supply chain. Remember, if you're going to produce a drug, in America you need GMP, good manufacturing processes. There are various, where is it going to come from? Where are your clinical trials going to be held? There's a company I know in Israel that finds pharma products all around the world, none of them in Israel, that the companies don't have time to exploit, and they get them through the FDA and then they flip them once they are approved. Where do they do their clinical trials? In Quebec, Canada. I have no idea why. Some government benefits, I assume. But it's important to have a plan. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Gonna go a little faster. Sales and distribution. The question is, how are you going to distribute your product? Your slide deck should have already thought this through. Marketing. How are you going to get your name out there? Your board of advisors can have a lot to do with it. Are you going to go through big pharma earlier? If yes, then will that kill the market for other pharmas to buy you eventually? If no, then how the heck are you going to distribute? Management team, very important. But what if you don't have money to hire them? If you can name names, then go ahead and do so. But to say, I have a person who's a great VP of sales, but I can't tell you his name until I'm funded and I can pay him a salary, don't do that. Because that's translation of saying, I have a great VP, but he thinks so little of me that he's not going to jeopardize his day job until I get funded. Not a good message. Don't be afraid to leave gaps, because the VCs will help you fill the gaps. They often have their in-house employment agencies. Cap table, don't forget a cap table. This is where your friends, family, and fools come in, and you show how much you've given to them, and it's very important to show that. And include an option pool. Use of proceeds, very important. What are you going to use that money for? 3 to 5 year projections. A misunderstood slide, but very important. Why is it very important? Because it purports to tell the future. Can any of you tell the future? If so, then you're a better man or woman than I, because I can't. And you know what? The VCs know you can't. So why do they want this? They want it because it shows that you know granularly, in great detail, what it's going to take to run your business. You may have plugged in too optimistic a number, but at least you plugged in a number. You realize that, oh, there's going to be such a thing as lawyers. I've got to pay for them. Accountants, I've got to pay for them. Regulatory consultants, what are they going to cost? You've thought it through. What are my revenues going to be like and when? And the VCs will ask you about the projections, not because they expect them to be real, but because it's an insight into how good you are at running a business. I once had a venture fund manager in the early days of venture capital who was asked to talk at a law firm that I was at that was the preeminent law firm for venture capital on the US East Coast. And he said, when you're representing my fund, always pay close attention to the projections. Never believe them, of course. But if you're going to invest in someone, you better understand their fantasies. Okay. Say what not to say and say. Okay. Yeah. Last slide. Nope, not last slide. Next to last. What not to say. Don't fall into the trap of trying to define your terms. That's presumptuous of you. If the VCs want your deal, they will tell you what the terms are, and then you negotiate from there, and I'll help you do it. And if any of you want to know how to do it, I have written articles on that. Be happy to send them to you for free, but if you want to know what kind of deal it is, but that's their job. What's your valuation? That's a sucker question, and they'll ask it because they want to find out if you're a sucker. There's no good answer. You can't know what your valuation is. You'll guess too low, and then you'll cheat yourself, or too high, and you'll look like a fool. There's only one good answer, one right answer, and that is the most that you or somebody else I'm talking to will pay for me. That's my valuation. That's the only answer you can give to that. Target closing dates. You don't know when the venture deal will close, and don't say, I need the money by X. Right? That was your job to figure out when to go to them. And if you plan wrong, then you're only going to look bad. Assume 3 to 6 months. 6 is better for the whole process. It really does take time. Potential buyers. I know the temptation is there to say, Pfizer would love this. Bayer would love this. This is a perfect thing for J&J. Don't do that because it makes it look like you're patronizing them. Do it a different way. Say, there's a strategic investor I'm trying to get, which is Pfizer, because they would be able to help, and I'm trying to get them. I don't know if I will, but people like that are who I'm aiming at. They're not stupid. The VCs know that the person who is a strategic investor today may be a buyer tomorrow and may be your exit vehicle. Now, you'll negotiate, or I'll negotiate for you, so that they don't tie you up in terms of right of first refusal, right of first offer, none of that. And they all say on the panels they don't do that. Of course, sometimes when it comes to the deal, they get a little ambitious, and then I remind them. Okay, last slide. Okay, reasonable expectations. It takes time, it really does. Identify your targets. Don't start chasing a fund or a strategic just because they look good. Because then you'll be in a really frustrating situation of one guy who's negotiating with you, and you can't know whether he's giving you a good valuation or not because the other guys are still 3 weeks behind doing due diligence. Coordinate. It takes patience, but believe me, it's worth it. Then, the timing I mentioned, it really does take that long. And legal costs. Don't try to offer your lawyer equity. Lawyers are conservative creatures, very conservative, and they've seen too many failures, so they'll value your equity way below what it's worth. Get your equity from the optimists, which are the angels, and then pay cash to the pessimists. It makes perfect business sense, and it will incent your lawyer a lot more than equity because he doesn't, in his heart of hearts, he's seen too many failures and he doesn't really believe anyway. And what happens if a lawyer doesn't believe in you? He has your junior associates do his work. Oh, one last thing I'll leave you with before I end. Beware of large law firms playing the following game. Here's the pitch. We really like what you have to say, and we love it, and we believe in you so much that we will give you free legal services until you're funded, and then, of course, you have the money to pay us. And if you never get funded, it's for free. What could be better? Now, since we have these translators, but they only work from English to Spanish, not from legalese to English, I will translate for you. We have these young associates we hired out of law school. they are the most helpless creatures God ever made. They can't tell their left hand from their right. The only way they're ever going to learn is by making serious mistakes on somebody. You look like a good somebody. Oh, and if by some chance, and they have no contacts, so all these fancy contacts that I, the partner, are telling you about, you're never going to see them. Oh, but if somehow you do get funded, you're going to get raped. It's a little bit different, but similar. Okay, beware of that. A good law firm is like a good shoe, it should fit. And better to have the cash and pay cash. You'll get much more respect, and you'll get your money's worth. So that's my talk, and I presume I don't have time for questions? No, didn't think so. Thank you all. You've been a wonderful audience, and thanks for the warm welcome.
Okay, we would like to thank the presentation to lawyer Samuel Schaffner, who delivered a valuable vision and very detailed, just as a tip as how you can present yourself, how can you reach the best path. He said something about the question, but please make it during the coffee break so we can move on with the agenda, because to continue with this conference exploring biotechnological venture, we would like to invite to the stage our second international guest, Emil Wang, who is coordinator and senior professor of the regulated science of Johns Hopkins University. Emil Wang is a lawyer specialized in food. At home, he's in charge of imparting classes on food, applications of the Food and Drug Administration. He's a graduate from engineering and biomedics from Johns Hopkins University from 1993, a lawyer of the University of Maryland of the School of Law from 2000. So he's going to share the presentation of exploring the biotech venture, regulations, fundraising, and opportunities. Please, we are now a trending topic through Conferencia Biotec, so please share the presentation of our guest. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Emil Wang, and I am very honored to be invited and attend the second Biotechnology International Conference. I'd like to thank Corfo, AmCham, and Imogen de Chile for the opportunity to visit Chile and contribute to the conference and share my experiences on regulatory aspects of a biotech company. This is my first time in Chile, and it is a beautiful country with beautiful people. And the hospitality and professionalism from the conference organizers, particularly AmCham and Lorena and Isadora, has been very welcoming. I feel the energy and commitment of all of the conference organizers, the panelists, and participants. Let me start off by sharing a little bit of my background. I am a regulator by training and experience. As mentioned, I have an undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering from Johns Hopkins. Immediately after graduating, I started to work at the FDA as a scientific reviewer of medical devices. So I was responsible for reviewing the pre-market applications for new and modified medical devices. I was interested in pursuing a career in public policy, and that motivated me to attend law school. In my FDA experiences, I have not only worked in medical devices, but also foods, some drug experience, but most importantly, I have experience in all aspects of regulatory affairs, from pre-market to inspections to post-market and compliance and policy. So my current position at FDA is as a senior advisor for manufacturing and regulatory policy. Although today I am here wearing my Hopkins hat. So I'm going to share with you my experience from academia and how I share my regulatory experience to students and other audiences. I also have experience as a food and drug attorney practicing FDA and healthcare law, advising clients on FDA, the Customs and Border Protection, and Consumer Products Safety Commission regulation. I would like to express that the disclaimer I have to provide, given my FDA role, is that none of the information or views expressed today necessarily represent the views of the FDA or the United States. So quickly, what I'm going to cover in my presentation today is my understanding of Chile's efforts in science, technology, and innovation, and in particular in the biotechnology industry, but most importantly to share the US and other regulatory agencies, including FDA's experience in the regulation of biotechnology, the FDA's efforts to implement its coordinated framework on the regulation of biotechnology, and efforts including a recent study by the National Academy of Sciences on preparing for future products of biotechnology. Also, I'm going to share some highlights of FDA's efforts to promote innovation in biotechnology. And finally, I will provide some thoughts, some lessons learned for Chile to consider in its national innovation policy. I will wrap up by providing a quick summary of the Johns Hopkins University's efforts in training biotechnology professionals in the Master of Science in Regulatory Science program. So I understand that Chile does have a national innovation policy and has been working on its 2014 through 2018 growth, innovation, and productive agenda to implement the country's policies in science, technology, and innovation. As part of Chile's national efforts, there are two strategic pillars that have been expressed. One is promoting the formation of human capital, and the second is strengthening the country's scientific and technological base. Now, we've heard that one of the biggest challenges that Chile has faced is translating the strengths in research and development and investment in biotechnology to be able to apply and commercialize these efforts. As mentioned, Chile has made substantial investments in biotechnology, with more than 50% of its investments in the development of products and services or processes associated with biotechnology. These efforts have identified systemic gaps that limit the development and impact of its national innovation policy with respect to biotechnology, including that regulation is not aligned with new technologies and may not fully support the innovation efforts. And part of this is harmonizing the regulation with international efforts that you might see in the US and the EU. Also, lack of human capital in business and technology transfer related to biotechnology. So as a result of these systemic gaps and filling these areas, it has been demonstrated that research and development, human capital, the education, and technology diffusion, including regulatory activities, are all interrelated. So I will share FDA's experiences as well as the US experiences that will help to inform Chile's efforts. So Chile's biotechnology strengths and the industries that have active efforts in this area include natural resource-based industries, agribusinesses, including agriculture. So these include mining, seafood, including salmon, aquaculture, fruit farming, and forestry, as well as its efforts to develop biomedicines. So these are all very diverse industries, and that speaks to the challenges in developing a coordinated strategy for biotechnology. I'm going to first share the US government's efforts in the regulation of biotechnology. And I'm going to start off by sharing the US coordinated framework for the regulation of biotechnology. This is a 30-year effort that was directed from the Office of the President, the executive branch in the government. The office recognized that while the current federal framework for regulating biotechnology products effectively protects health and the environment, the coordinated framework for the regulation of biotechnology was necessary and developed to address challenges due to advances in science and technology of biotechnology products. The challenges that the US faces include that advances in science and technology have altered the biotechnology landscape rapidly. The complexity of new and emerging products within the current regulatory system can make it difficult for the public to understand how the safety of biotechnology products is evaluated. So developing the public trust and confidence in the regulatory system and the resulting approval of biotechnology products is essential for the successful commercialization of these products. The complexity of the current regulatory system, because there are numerous agencies involved in the regulation of these products, creates challenges for small and mid-sized businesses to navigate the regulatory processes for biotechnology products. To address these challenges, the coordinated framework has issued tasks to the primary federal agencies involved in regulating biotechnology products. These are the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. I will be covering a little bit more in the upcoming slides, but primarily this coordinated framework includes identifying and clarifying the roles and responsibilities of these agencies, developing a long-term strategy to effectively assess and regulate future products of biotechnology, and to work with other parties and stakeholders to analyze and forecast the future landscape of biotechnology products. So I was a little bit anxious, but that is basically what this slide covers in terms of the tasks of the coordinated framework. And the ultimate goals of these efforts, again, is to increase public confidence in the regulatory system, and also importantly, to prevent unnecessary burden to future innovation and competitiveness. Let me first describe the roles and responsibilities of the major federal agencies. First, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. EPA is responsible for protecting human health and the environment. Examples of the types of products that EPA regulates with respect to biotechnology include new microorganisms that are not covered by other federal agencies. New microorganisms are those intergeneric microorganisms, including bacteria, fungi, algae, viruses, protozoa, and so on, formed by combining genetic material from organisms in different genera. The other major area in biotechnology that EPA regulates, having shared responsibility with FDA and USDA, are those related to agricultural biotechnology, including pesticides. EPA regulates pesticides created through biotechnology, including those produced through genetic engineering. This includes chemical pesticides, microorganisms, biochemicals, and plant-incorporated protectants. So with respect to pesticides, EPA sets the pesticide residue tolerance limits that FDA enforces those pesticides present in foods. Next, FDA. FDA regulates a wide variety of products, including human and animal foods, including dietary supplements, cosmetics, human and veterinary drugs, human biological products, and medical devices. For biotechnology products, FDA regulates the safety of human and animal foods derived from genetically engineered plants. That's the first bullet. Foods from genetically engineered plants must meet the same food safety requirements as food derived from traditionally bred plants. The link, the hyperlink that's available on the first bullet, provides more information on FDA's activities with respect to bioengineered plants, and that includes information on genome editing in plants, FDA's biotechnology processes on foods derived from new plant varieties, consultation procedures about bioengineered foods under development, pre-market notification for bioengineered foods, and other regulatory information. The second bullet covers FDA's efforts to regulate genetically engineered animals, such as genetic material or recombinant DNA, construct that is integrated into the DNA of an animal. The hyperlink also provides information on these activities, such as guidance documents, approvals, for example, genetically engineered salmon, and other information for industry and consumers. The third bullet covers FDA's efforts to regulate human drugs, biological products, and medical devices that are derived using biotechnology. Examples of these types of biomedicines produced using biotechnology methods include monoclonal antibodies designed as targeted therapies in cancer and other diseases. So these include the efforts that Chile is working on with Pfizer on precision medicine. Also, cytokinase, which, as you know, is a type of protein involved in immune response. Also, growth factors, proteins that affect the growth of a cell. Enzymes, types of proteins that speed up biochemical reactions. And immunomodulators, agents that affect immune response. So these include vaccines. And the third major federal agency is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is responsible for developing and executing federal laws relating to farming, agriculture, forestry, and food. Both the EPA, FDA, and USDA regulates plants using biotechnology to ensure that such products derived from them are safe for farmers to use, safe for consumers to consume as food or animals as feed, and are safe for the environment. USDA regulates new plant varieties being developed or grown by farmers that are produced using genetic engineering, which involves manipulating the plant's genes through recombinant DNA technology. USDA plays a role in ensuring that biotechnology plants and products derived from these plants are safe to be grown and used in the United States. Once these plants and products enter U.S. commerce, the USDA supports bringing these and other products to the worldwide marketplace. The links on this slide identify examples of USDA agencies that are involved in the regulation of biotechnology. You can access more information on each of these agencies through the hyperlink on this slide. I'm not otherwise going to go into specific detail in the interest of time. So I had mentioned that the federal government, through the executive branch, has a coordinated framework on the regulation of biotechnology. This year, in 2017, there was an update to this framework to clarify the current roles and responsibilities of the agencies that regulate biotechnology products by accomplishing the following objectives. Clarify what biotechnology product areas are within the authority and responsibility of each agency. Clarify the roles that each agency plays for these different product areas, particularly the roles that these agencies play with one another during the course of their regulatory assessment. Also, clarify a standard mechanism for communication and coordination among these agencies. and also clarify the mechanism and timeline for regularly reviewing and updating the coordinated framework to minimize delays, support innovation, protect health and the environment, and promote the public trust in the regulatory system. The coordinated framework and the 2017 update identified these principles for regulating biotechnology products. And so you can see that it involves how to regulate these products based upon risk, its applications, and how to work among and between the agencies. This year, the National Academy of Sciences conducted a study on future biotechnology products and opportunities to enhance capabilities of the biotechnology regulatory system. So you can see the tasks covered on this slide. Describe future biotechnology products, describe existing risk analysis systems, determining future potential products and the type of risks that they may pose, and what types of scientific capabilities, tools, and expertise might be needed. These slides might not be very clear to you in the audience, but basically it covers on the y-axis the different types of biotechnology products, and across the x-axis are the committee's assessment of products currently on the market, those under development, and those that are being developed in early stage concepts. Also highlighted are those products that the committee felt had the most potential. So they include biomining, they include genome-edited crops. This slide covers open release products, those that are intended to be released in the open environment. This slide covers the committee's assessment of biotechnology products in closed environments, those used or produced in sealed environments such as laboratories or ponds. The committee also assessed the level of complexity. So you can see moving across the x-axis are products with increasing complexity and novelty. And what the committee identified is a proposed federal-wide system for evaluating these biotechnology products. And you can see that there are different suggested ways that the committee recommended based upon the level of complexity. So based upon the level of complexity and any comparators that the agencies can use to assess the products, particularly its risk, then it might involve additional input from stakeholders, from outside expert advisory panels and other interested and affected parties. So that is, in essence, what this slide represents. A few thoughts on FDA's innovation efforts. I will say that these efforts have been initiated through either FDA's internal processes and or working with stakeholders such as industries, as well as legislative requirements from Congress. So one of the efforts that I'll highlight, particularly with respect to biomedicine innovation, is the efforts to identify those innovative products and the programs for identifying those products that will have priority review, that are breakthrough therapy, accelerated approval, and fast track. There are also comparable pathways in medical devices. But generally, these identify those products that fill an unmet medical need and for which there are either improvements over existing therapies or that there are no other alternative existing therapies available. And so efforts include reduced review times, more interactive reviews, and other commitments by FDA to collaborate with industry. I'll also mention that FDA has a critical path program where there are opportunities to formally meet with FDA on pending and existing applications. So these meetings, both before the clinical investigations and trials are initiated, before the marketing application, and during the regulatory review, provide opportunities to work with FDA on addressing the FDA requirements and expectations. I'll also mention that this year, the new FDA commissioner publicized its efforts to reduce barriers to generic drug competition. And one of these efforts is to identify those products that are coming off patent and exclusivities that are eligible for generic drug applications. Also, FDA has efforts to develop many general and product-specific guidance documents in areas such as bioequivalence. So, as a result of the US and FDA and other regulatory agencies' experiences, I think there are lessons learned and opportunities for Chile's national innovation policy. One area to consider is to clarify the current roles and coordinate the activities of the regulatory agencies here in Chile. Another is to harmonize these activities moving forward with other regulatory requirements that you would see in the US and in the EU. The last report from the National Academies of Science, I think, is an opportunity for Chile to consider, and I believe that Fernando Martinez has some thoughts on this in his presentation. And this is having some committee or some organization to evaluate and to conduct a census on the existing efforts in the different biotechnology industries that are being conducted here in Chile, identify those promising products and candidates for support and further development. So these are efforts that FDA has long been taking in this area. In the interest of time, I'll just quickly cover the efforts by Johns Hopkins University to develop the human capital to support the biotechnology industry. One of the significant accomplishments that represents FDA's strength in this area is its designation as an FDA Center of Excellence in Regulatory Science and Innovation. So through this effort, FDA and these 5 identified academic institutions collaborate to advance regulatory science through research, education, and scientific exchange. I'm a member of the faculty and a senior lecturer in the Master of Science in Regulatory Science program. I think that the objective of Johns Hopkins and my own personal teaching objective would be best characterized by the Chinese proverb that you may know and have heard about, which is, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So what I mean by that is this program, its strength comes from the faculty and the students. Faculty are all practicing professionals with demonstrated expertise in regulatory science and regulatory affairs. Students, for the most part, are all working professionals. I've had students who work at FDA as colleagues. I've had students that are accomplished professionals and students that are renowned scientists. So the Master of Science program has been developed in collaboration with leaders from FDA, industry, and academia, and you can see that it is a 10-course program, 7 of which are required, 3 electives, and it can be completed entirely online. This slide represents the 7 core required courses, and you can see that it covers not only the academic didactic materials, but also some of the issues raised in this conference, such as translational biotechnology. Students also have an opportunity to tailor their academic experience and interests by taking elective classes, as represented on this slide. This includes courses that I teach in international regulatory affairs, medical device and combination product regulation, and FDA regulatory submissions. And finally, there are research and experiential opportunities that students demonstrate their understanding and application of these products to an idea of interest to them, and ultimately is of publishable quality to demonstrate their understanding and application. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm very honored to share the US, the FDA's experience, as well as Johns Hopkins' efforts to support the FDA efforts, and hopefully some of this information and lessons learned can be taken into consideration by Chile to support its national innovation efforts. Thank you very much.
Really, in order to acquire knowledge, we can use streaming. Now we will have the panel Chile Global Biotech Sciences, Challenges and Perspectives. I'd like to remind all of you that this is now time to conduct your questions. So therefore, as the panel starts progressing, we will ask you to please raise your hand so we can gather those questions and formulate them to our guests. Chile Global Biotech is a network that is created by Imagen de Chile to group the Chilean talent that is in foreign countries. As Miriam was saying this morning, they all act as positive, they're ambassadors for our country. This group is also, the aim is to incentivize the incorporation of new ideas in the project by channeling the contacts, the knowledge that are very valuable, and the experiences of those in the role in the United States and in other markets that are state-of-the-art in these affairs. The group that is here with us today is going to focus on showing their experiences in professional development and how they have evolved in biotechnology. We wanted to consider the gender aspect this year, therefore we'll have a small space or a space to address gender and women in this area, to promote all of our friends, all of our ladies that are in charge of scientific entrepreneurship. I'd like to remind you this for this panel, we will have questions, and that is in the block that is within each one of your bags, so you can maybe take notes there and write down your questions. I will present each one of our guests, and then I will invite you later to sit here in our small living room. Jessica Campos is the director and founder of Camp Nexus. She's a civil engineer in biotechnology at the Universidad de Chile, Chile University. She has wide experiences in marketing, research and development that comes from the academy by leading projects for multinational companies, among them Bayer Corporation in the United States, Procter & Gamble in Latin America, Earth Liquid in Germany and in France. She is also the director and co-founder of CAM Nexus, a platform for technological transfer for the sustainable development based in Cambridge, that's associated to the Equality Center of that House of Studies in the United Kingdom. Eduardo Aveluk is also here with us. He is a founder and technological director of Teslagen Biotechnology. He is a physicist, electrical engineer from Universidad de Chile. He has a master's in bioengineering, a PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Stanford in the United States. That's where he's led different projects. He's led different projects that are linked to biotechnology, to online education, and he created it and is the technological director of Teslagen Biotechnology, a company that, as I mentioned before, is of synthetic biology that is located based in San Francisco, California, and develops and markets a software platform that manipulates genetics of organisms used in different industries. Its objective is to support large companies in the field of biotechnology in the optimization of diverse or several processes. This panel is completed by Gabriela Cesar, which is the main founder of Panarea Partners. She's a doctor in veterinary medicine from Federal University of Mato Grosso do Sul in Brazil, of course, and has a master's in transgenics from the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, and a master's in animal sciences of the University of Brasilia. She is also a co-founder of a company that is focused on marketing metabolomic of stem cells and biomarkers that are developed in the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the United States. This is added to actually being the senior director of Pfizer External Research and Development Innovation for Latin America between 2012 and 2015. She has more than 10 years of experience with regard to growing markets, a long trajectory, and wide experience in innovation and development with transactions in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and South Africa. She is currently the general director and main partner of Panarea Partners, accelerated from the United States, which boosts companies that are related with biological sciences. We will give all the three of them a big round of applause.
Please go to your seats. We have Jessica, Eduardo, and we have Gabriel here. I'm going to be with you on this side. Okay, I would like to start with you with the first question. I'm going to begin with Eduardo because it's related to a question that has arisen here about the coverage made by the media, which is what is the opinion you have that in the topics in biotechnology, the most relevant ones. What is the vision that you have of biotechnology? I'm sorry, I welcome you. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks the organizers and everyone who came here today. There are different areas of technology. There are coming in medical devices, and one or two areas in particular that I believe are very strong ones are the developments in the genome aspects, and I believe this is a very difficult topic because there are development made on DNA sequences that are being sequenced by human genome. Different companies are carrying out medical tests and sequencing organisms for us in order to associate those data with diseases that you could develop and topics associated to nutrition and quality of life. And on the other side, that is something that just recently began and has promoted low cost to synthesize DNA, and people are pursuing different applications that are associated with synthetic biology. There are different techniques that have emerged and that are very relevant in the United States in order to efficiently synthesize and ensemble DNA, but to edit DNA. And we have CRISPR-Cas9 technique, which is which is very present in different magazines. It is something that has revolutionized the biotechnology area when we saw the beginning of the industry. We have different techniques that will help to eliminate certain diseases of the genome. I would like to say thank you very much for inviting me. I mean, I speak some sort of Spanish, but I'm going to try. In the field of science, which is the one I work for more than 13 years, the last 3 or 4 years, we've made significant progress, and there's a lot of business interest. Something that is really important and that I would like to mention, that us as scientists, because I began my career like that, we have to adapt to the commercial values. For example, today in health, an area that begins 4 or 5 years, such as the result of the research carried out several years ago, is the immunology and oncologic area, and almost miracle cures for several diseases that we didn't know, for tumors that has developed such a great development recording these cures. And another case is the gene therapy that we began starting in the 1990s, and we had to stop because there was a case of a boy that died after a therapy, and then nobody wanted to know of gene therapy. But now that we have vectors, safer vectors, that the virus is given by these therapies, there is another area that has seen a boom globally. And the third area is areas that mainly, because we need to consider when we're working in health, the investment that we're making, the projects that we're developing, is who's going to pay for this. And for accounts and investments of, I don't know, 5, 6, or 7 years. The last thing I'm going to talk about in specific areas are new indications. For example, providers. This is an area now that this year we recently saw the biggest companies of venture capital in the U.S. will work with BC Capital, which are my partners, and we are searching for indications that until recently did not seem so valuable. And the last cause I will talk is there are no more barriers, because we are seeing every single big company to multinational pharmaceutical companies are looking abroad for innovation. I was the general manager of this group that is external RDI, which is the external research and development, and biotechnology, external one that we carried out in our laboratories, is becoming more important, and therefore I left that company 2 years in order to work solely for growing companies. And we fortunately, which was my dream, was to see innovation per innovation developed, patents developed in Latin America, and they will have a presence and will be used in the portfolio of one of the biggest multinationals. We haven't made the announcement yet due to regulatory issues, financial market aspects, but we are trying to make this announcement in JP Morgan Healthcare in January of next year. Congratulations for that. I'm a banker, I'm sorry. Jessica, in the European market, are your thoughts? First of all, thank you very much for the invitation and for being here today. We're based in England, so trying to complement everything that has been already said. And considering the political situation currently in the UK, there has been something very interesting regarding the research priorities, such as strategic initiatives of innovation associated to global challenges. And the same point as Gabriela said, biotechnology is so broad, and we're not talking about human health or life science, which is not only focused on human health, but we have a wide coverage that is for organisms to getting to know genomes in resilience topics for climate change, for example. But what do we know now? A change in a science or technology based, supported by data, to a science that is driven by data. Digital innovation, the topic of digital in healthcare, the combination of information system, engineering, physics, chemistry, allied with the application in live organisms or applications to health, is something that we're trying to see what global challenges arise. Antibiotic assistance, use and manage of water. How can we face the aging of the population? There is a need that is cross-sectional for every population, not only the 3 million people that cannot live with, that live currently with less than $1, but to everyone who is also here. What you describe and what has been commented is that this is sort of a cornerstone for big data, the manage of every data, in combination with what you study, with the cure for different diseases or problems that we have as humankind. This seems to be the perfect link for this to happen. And Eduardo, can you comment on what I said about the priority of gender? And you said internally that you had a mentor who was a woman who really helps you in your professional development. So can you share your personal experiences in order to generate questions from the audience? Yeah, undoubtedly. I believe that in biotechnology, unlike what happened 50 or 30 years ago, it is amazing how in research centers, engineering departments are being integrated to faculty of biology, medical centers, and biology and biotechnology that's coming for the next 20 years will really require the work of multidisciplinary teams, biologists, molecular studies, computer engineers that will, and can they share spaces? Well, it is a challenge, but by having participated in both work, because I took my doctoral studies in engineering, I was a bit nerd, you can say more mathematical. And then I moved on to biology through the Stanford department, which was a team that was very interested in this topic. And I rapidly discovered and I connected with Lucy Shapiro, who was the founder of Bellman Centers at Stanford for biochemical studies, and I began working hand in hand with those who work in biochemistry, molecular studies, and people tend to talk from the biology areas, tend to speak a different language, but the entertaining thing is to see these so very different areas and to create an understanding of both worlds. And the world where I work, which is not a single one. You realize that in these excellence centers is promoted and driven by multidisciplinary teams because you have people from electrical engineer, computer science, biotechnology. My mentor and all the people I worked with at Stanford, more than 50% were women. In biology, and in comparison with other disciplines such as computer science, they are trying to move forward and they've made progress when it comes to equality of gender. I think that they require more women, such as information technology and computer science, because are becoming ever more important for biotechnology. And in the case, I work with many women, and my mentor was a source of inspiration, great source for me. And in addition to being a very known academician, she founded a pharmaceutical that was acquired by Pfizer in more than $5,000 million. And there you can see, at least in my personal experience, that there are women that are very successful and inspire others, especially men, to go to applied science and science in general because that has a direct access to other markets. I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but when we talk about the need to combine these areas that are so very different, the emotional intelligence of women could play a fundamental role there. Well, one of the aspects is that I have these business meetings and I even take pictures because that is 12 men and I. But I'm already used to this. But when I started talking in biotechnology in the United States, I started working with my co-founder, and we worked with the purpose of investment vehicles. There are funds in the United States. We've made investment for green investments for companies created by women and in administrative boards, but there is a vehicle that has helped significantly, and we have a springboard. I don't know if you are associated. They came here and they've made a great work for 15 years. I was in Argentina last week, and I can tell you that I had a great time there. And I was working with an executive because here in Latin America, there's still a need not only for capital, not only for venture capital, but for official vehicles that will support, invest in these companies because it's not easy. But in an area we have 3 men and the rest of us are only women. And that's how we created the company. And Jessica, your vision, obstacles, challenges, and everything associated to gender. Well, to be honest, for me, it's a topic that should not be a topic. That's what we all do. But I participated in several activities, and I am part of the team of a program at Cambridge, which is enterprise-wise, that begins from the interest to have women to move forward to business venture, and I work as a mentor there. But when it comes to, yeah, my supervisors, I've been in every situation with them, and something that I've realized is that we're not very supportive to each other as women. and I was at the Faculty of Engineering, 10 women in a course of 100, and that's something that we are. If I had a hard time, you need to have a hard time. So that seems to be some sort of line, a very unsupportive one. And the work with this type of, because it's very difficult, because there's another side that since you know your potential and you have competed in a group where 90% are men and there's no preference or anything, then you demand the same. But I believe that this is more about making visible and generating awareness. And in my case in Europe, I realized that not only I was a woman, but I was a Latin American woman, and that I was not a PhD holder. So in a conversation with one of my bosses that was about me wanting to know about the career, he told me, look, Jessica, you're a woman, Latin American, and without a PhD, why you should go back to your house and to your family? And I believe that you can find everything. There are very supportive people, but what do I try to communicate? Nothing is easy because maybe you have problems because of your race, your religion, your gender, but we need to create awareness, working in educating, because this is a cultural topic, to educate, to train, but we are all different. Every single person is different, and I don't believe that I have more emotional intelligence than others. I know men that have a higher emotional intelligence than I do, but I believe that this is a teamwork. But I believe that if you have, I'm going to ask you if you have your questions, please raise your hand so we can collect the questions. And we will begin the Q&A. We've seen two presentations today that's been very clear about what do you have to do, what are the main obstacles in your opinion that a project faces, a Chilean project that is trying to enter these markets, and what advice could you give given your experience? Well, I believe that when you're trying to be an entrepreneur and you're trying to find funds, create a website, develop the project, sell the project. In our case, funding, we were lucky enough because we capitalized our company with co-founder partners and a close group of angels and family office. And then we began with the National Fund Foundation in the United States, and that was so helpful because they gave us grants from the government, but that also helped us validate ourselves in the North American market. And I believe that to face this challenge, Chileans should use the elements provided by Corfu, for example, because you don't have to create a company that will necessarily depend on these grants forever, but it will be a helpful tool to begin. And when it comes to gender, in scientific terms, I think that since I started researching at Stanford, I can see that to obtain funding for women could be more difficult because investors in general, no, I don't know if 100%, but 99% is very male dominated. And you can face some sort of discrimination, but from our side, we try to support several top several topics of OFC, and then we focused on trying to build a product that could have a commercial validation. We started attracting the first customers, and fortunately, since we are a software company, we were able to, after a few years, to finally find success and generate revenue, and now we are in a more comfortable position in order to find more capital. And that is, for an entrepreneur, that topic, how to obtain funding and how to obtain it without losing so much time and moving from your focus, covers a need for the market. And to have teams is a very constant challenge. And now we have an office in Santiago, and we're looking for people specializing in artificial intelligence and data science. And it's very difficult to find good people and to make them try to work with eagerness. And you need to be careful because you want to find good people and to retain them.
Undoubtedly, Jessica was saying, you were commenting more on this and the need to have a work team, and maybe to add something that I believe is quite relevant for the audience too, is the importance of the network, of creating a network. You're not alone in this work. You need the support of others. Therefore, there are some key elements that I believe I learned, maybe, I don't know if that's an advantage or a disadvantage, but before connecting. One of the things that I learned in Procter & Gamble, which is another university, was to be able to learn or to have from the beginning mentors, tutors, coaches, trainers, and sponsors who are people that are key for our growth, both at a corporate level, if you're not in a company, if we're in a company, and at an entrepreneur level, which is key. Not only identifying the team with whom I'm going to work, that is going to change at different stages of matureness of entrepreneurship, but at the same time, it's important, as Andres was mentioning, Eduardo was mentioning, it's important who is supporting us that already has the experience is important for us too. And on that last note, well, everyone has a different role, and the sponsor is critical to generate, for example, validations. It could be both to obtain resources, to connect with customers, all of that. What is important with regard to the generation or capacity building is that we have to be very honest with ourselves and others, specifically when we're in this turbulent trip of entrepreneurship. One tends to try to manage everything at the same time, and sometimes it's kind of hard to let go when we have to let go because we do not have the capacity anymore. Therefore, the different stages of this journey may imply different abilities and different expertise. And we have to be quite honest with ourselves to be able to let go when that happens. And that's when many times, particularly knowing a little bit from the academy point of view and from the research point of view, that's when that happens. When we invent something and it's like your son, your daughter, and you want to grow with him, you have to let him or her go, because if not, he or she is not going to achieve the success of the project, and that's a critical part of self-knowledge. I like that. I think that applies in all fields of life, knowing how to let go. Gabriela, where would you focus? What would you emphasize in this career? If we looked at the overview and say, okay, this is the path, I found all these obstacles, hurdles, and I had all these advantages, what would you like to comment? Well, first of all, I'd like to speak about, I see the disadvantages of Chile, because just to make clear, the work that we do currently is that we work with companies of different stages. For example, preclinical programs, new therapies that are just beginning, clinical development. We work one by one, and we trace the companies for the global market. Sometimes, what do I see? That the main challenge is quite simple. What is it? It's something that's quite simple. It's processes. What do you mean processes? Data that we generate here, many times, almost always, are not in standards, international standards. That is how we lose time, the investment that was already done, just to redo it. And it's something that is quite simple. Innovation is here, the patents are here, licenses are here. This example that I talked about, I call it the dream deal because our dream, it's our dream. And we have had, for example, a molecule that's discovered in Latin America that now is going to populate the portfolio of a multinational company. Therefore, quality exists, creativity exists. It's something that's quite simple. Processes. We conduct part of the studies in a laboratory, in the university's laboratory, that is still still do not have the license, the accreditations. Therefore, when I present, what we do with companies is say, okay, we have to repeat, and then we agree on ideas to assess the program. The initial idea is good, but it does not have the process. Yes, it has initial data, but the process that was used for generating this data, it's quite simple. They were not conducted according to the methodologies, to the regulatory packages that they need, to the laboratories. For example, it's even where you keep lab rats, for example. Therefore, this is quite simple. Chile has an advantage. I work with Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Colombia, and Chile has an advantage here, and we will compare ourselves to our neighbors. Which one of our neighbors? Brazil, for example, Argentina, the closest neighbors. The role that Corfo, the Chilean Economic Agency, has had, which is continuous, here's the key. The role of Corfo from the beginning up to many years is continuous, with investments not only in innovation in the academy, but with companies. Neighbors do not have that. In Argentina, CONISAT, for example, everything that happened with Macri last week, because after the crisis, you go and seek opportunities. But even institutions, as pairs of Corfo, counterparts of Corfo in Brazil and Argentina, do not do the same thing that Corfo does. And what Corfo has had in a continuous manner, you change the term of the government, you can change the priorities, but the investment is there. And this does not happen in other countries. Let's talk about Brazil. Just in companies. Then we have the institution with the crisis of the government, which cannot invest more. Therefore, if you start a project up to 5 years, this is why it's a real advantage. I'm not working for Corfo or anything, but disclaimer, right? Who in Corfo was talking to her in the coffee break? No, I conducted projects. Well, one of the projects that I created and I developed here in Chile was the first center for research and development for medicine, and it was in the Center for Medicine. It was within the, and we had a quite aggressive idea, quite ambitious ideas. I was the manager from New York. We have the president of oncology who went into the plane and he traveled here to see if we could change the project. Yes, we did do this with Corfo. And not only for Pfizer, but we attracted more private capital. We gathered and we bought Thermo Fisher. Now, there's another point that you might not know. Also comparing ourselves with neighbors. There are no biotechnology companies in Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Uruguay that already has programs that are under development that are accepted by the FDA. Only Chile has this advantage. Look at the size of the market in Brazil. So therefore, Agenis is going into phase 2, Andes, Biotech for oncology, the same. And there's another one in medical devices that has gathered the 510K record of a medical device. There's not even one in Argentina or Brazil. Thank you very much for letting us know that the institutions exist. When we're a little bit closer, we do not appreciate things that much. Now, I have many questions, but I'd like you to please be brief in your answers because we have to close soon the panel, but I have to make these questions. Eduardo Gonzalo Vial asks how open access ideology of synthetic biology is related with its eventual marketing, or possible marketing. There are different efforts of free access in synthetic biology. There's different projects. What we do, the truth is from Celagen, is that we're using some tools from Celagen. We're using some that are free for the scientific community, but when the company wants to use this, most of the time the company does not require more than just running a software tool. It needs an infrastructure, an enterprise software infrastructure that helps them manage in a safe manner the data that they're managing. Because for many of these biotechnology companies, a great part of the intellectual property of what they do is in the design of a gene, of a molecule. Therefore, they need to have, in some way, an infrastructure to be able to store and manage in a safe manner the data, which is something that we do and that we're able to market. But I think it's important for any company in the biotechnology field to be quite integrated with the community in general of the developments that are being conducted, both from the bioinformatic point of view and from the scientific general point of view. Therefore, we're quite concerned to be working and participating in academic workshops and different conferences and communities with students, the academy, etc. Thank you. Now, Jessica Sebastián Fica is asking you, what are the steps that we have to take for Chile to be at a level of developed countries in terms of advances in biotechnology? Well, I'd like to just add that the subject of continuity is not only reflected in Corfo, it's also reflected in the OECD reports, continuity with regard to investment, with regard to programs to fund research, where the large criticism that there is a lack of revision, of update of some instruments. But in terms of continuity, there is nothing that is similar in our region. Therefore, that is quite valued. In fact, you're using the same devices that are initiating the ones that are in research careers. It's the same devices that have been here for 20 years. So therefore, that is something that is quite distinguishable. I believe that one of the keys, one of the critical points, at least from my experience, and for all of you that know me, you know that this is just my experience, and here experts in the ecosystem are you. You're the experts in ecosystems. You're the ones that are here. Therefore, there's no recipe, there's no formula in which to put these into context. We're in different places, different policies, and different cultural issues. Now, what I see from my experience in Cambridge, which is not a reflection of the United States, of the UK or of England, the development has relied on good sciences, a good scientific basis, an excellence in research, an institution that has a solid and a clear mission with regard to the excellence at a global level, that does not need to have the words entrepreneurship and innovation in it, because it's obvious that what is good and that is excellent at a global level will have an impact. Basically, if we want, this is not only an issue, a monetary or economic issue. In fact, whoever wants to make money with technological transfer, for example, improvements in other matters, what this tries to do is to generate impact, to add a value for the country, for example. And in that regard, what I've seen the most is that we have a scientific basis with different recipes, ingredients that exist in the ecosystem. Visionary individuals that are normally entrepreneurs, solutions, very good technologies or good science that finds a clear need. There's a clear need. Most of the times it's not the scientist that sees the application, but the partner. And to do the de-risk of investment, we need to have validated through, as previously mentioned, funding that is public funding that could be through grants, non-dilutive. So that's basically it. Now, there's much potential, I believe, from a scientific point of view, but we have to adopt new and good practices, specifically in biotechnology. What is the great issue? It's the good practices and a regulatory framework that is clear. That was talked about today in the morning. The message has to be understood, has to be clear, not only for the researcher, but for the SME that will conduct a project in biotechnology. A clear roadmap with regard to, okay, if we want to do this technology, of this development, this is the way of acting, and for it to be harmonized with what is happening at a global level, because the development that we will conduct here will not only be for Chile. You have to look in a global perspective. Those would be the main points to highlight. Now, Jorge Cerda asks the following: Gabriela, do you consider coaching and leadership important tools for teamwork, and how? Yes, very much. Throughout my career, when I was a student, postgraduate student in the United States, I always had tutors. This is quite interesting because I'm like you. I'm Latin. I went to the U.S. to study. I did not know anyone, etc. And on the road, you find people, for example, Fred Krames, who is one of those people, who is the CEO from BC Capital. Fred has $1.8 billion under his management, and he has already conducted more than 50 IPOs. Therefore, he conducts the investments in biotechnology companies from the beginning until the development, and then until the exit with the IPOs. Therefore, he is a gentleman that has a track record that is extraordinary, but he is also a person that is so genuine, that's quite interested for the other person. It's I exited Pfizer thanks to him. He said, okay, you're an entrepreneur. I know you for more than 15 years. I had an investment venture capital fund in Brazil first, $120 million in 2010 with a market which was broken per se. And he said, okay, you have to start your own business, and that's how we have our different interests. That's an example. There's another lady that works with me today, Lauren Flanagan, and she was my investor twice. She invested in me twice, in my company, in biotechnology in the United States, twice. And now she works with me. Therefore, in your career, always in terms of leadership, it is necessary to have different styles for each company, for each team. For me, for example, I have a quite flexible style, and that's what I say, because as a scientist, if you're working with scientists, you have to let people create. If it's all very rigid, it does not work. But then we have to, I believe that imitation is what we're doing here. Our intentions are to integrate company rules until we get to academic institutions. For example, accountability, terms. With no excuse, if it doesn't work, we have terms. Even because of the investment that we receive, this is a defect that we all have. In Brazil, we receive the investment, we receive the grants, and then the accountability is not there. And it has to do with time too, right? Which is quite critical in order not to lose time with something that is not going anywhere. And as Jessica mentioned, good sciences are great sciences, but always with an interest. I worked in the team that cloned Dolly, the sheep. Is there anything more exciting than cloning? We had in the lab, we had NBC, etc. in Scotland, in a small village, Raslin. Everyone was there, all the media, CNN, etc. What happened? There was no interest, commercial or trade interest. Sciences are exceptional. However, we're going to clone. Okay, I conducted my PhD in cloning as well, but after this, due to regulations, the FDA did not know what to do, how to regulate the proteins that we insert into these animals that are transgenic and cloned, etc. Therefore, commercial interest has to be married with the great science. That is to know that, for example, okay, I do not have this, let's work on something else. There has to be a balance between the needs and solution in all fields. I believe that in all professions that works. I'd like to ask you for a brief 20 seconds for you to say a final message, a conclusion, whatever you esteem convenient to go to the next lecture. Maybe resonating a little bit with what was mentioned, just to add, I think that it's important for entrepreneurs, for scientists in general, to be open-minded, to look to resonate with people that not necessarily think alike or like us, but for them to have different perspectives, points of view, and ideally with people that we admire, that we respect. It has helped me by going back to the prior point of looking for mentors. You have to relate with people that you work with, people that you respect, people that you can learn from, because I believe that in general there's a saying that says that we are the average of the 10 people with whom we relate to the most. That would be a closing message. I'd like to say that it is time for us to be the owners of Latin America. What concerns me is that we're always we have projects for Argentina, then for, okay, no, you have to do it here. Chile, no, you have to do it here. Brazil, no, the market is too big. That's what they say. Now, if we do not take this opportunity and we start to work together as one unique Latin America, I'm not going to say who's going to lead what has happened in other regions and continents. But this market, as a market, in this market there's a global role that we cannot question, and we have to stop with this. For example, we're developing a diagnostic pool in Latin America and in Uruguay. I was speaking with the companies in Argentina. They said, "Oh no, we have to do it here in Buenos Aires," and I said, "Why? Let's just have one Latin America with no barriers, no frontiers, with collaborations only, even for markets." I know that here, when I started working with Chile, they said, "Oh, okay, we're a quite small market," and I said, "I don't care either. The science, everything that we're generating, has to do with genes, with the Andes, etc. We will open our minds a little bit and work with our neighbors to try to claim Latin America as our region and not to let others take or fragment part of it. And Mexico we have to work more with Mexico, with Colombia, with Ecuador, etc.
Well, I have written a few things. First, vision, because I believe that it could be a national, or because we actually took this from the speakers, this vision could lead to the cliff of one aspect. Who takes the lead and decides the decision of the nation towards biotechnology, what they're going to do, what the program is they're trying to do with the 2013 program, to know what is the competitive advantage of Chile. Why should someone invest here in a development? Why can't they do it in Brazil? No, Brazil, no, it's okay. what makes us different. And I think there are a few aspects that are very unique and very important, and that is regarding the biological characteristic here. And what happens if we're able to provide it value for it? How many kilometers of seed do we have? We should be the expert. We have a diversity of biological ecosystems, and we should be there, the first ones taking that value, analyzing it in advanced therapies, in topics of agriculture. There's a diversity, and there the regulatory framework that in order to finish. This Algenis company, which is a neurotoxin, 2 molecules that are extracted from algae here from Patagonia, is very interesting. And I would, well, Chile, the main income is copper mining, and there are microorganisms that feed by dissolving copper sulfur, which is one of the main minerals that the country has. And well, Cesar Valenzuela goes to you. How can biotechnology help in the mining industry? You could. This is a plus. Thank you for the question, and everyone who participated. We would like to receive the Director of Business Venture from the Education Center in Biotechnology of Johns Hopkins, Linson Johnson, who will make the presentation of gender and opportunities for business ventures of biotechnology in the U.S. We will know about the opportunities in North America for the internationalization of projects in biotechnology. We will know about her interesting vision and experience for spaces of women in said country. Dr. Lynn Johnson Langer is part of the Director Emirate Board and President of Women in Bio, which is trying to promote the participation of women in the biotechnology area. She has an MBA from Johns Hopkins University and a PhD in leadership and change. She has worked for marketing in several biotechnology companies and be the founder and Bioplan Associate, a consulting company and marketing. She is the author of more than 20 chapters of books and publications for topics associated to life, and she is in charge of the Masters for Business and Biotechnology. So we have the exactly right person for this. And an MBA and Masters of Science for Companies of Biotechnology. She's part of the Directive Board of Advanced Education in Science, a program for graduate students from National Institute of Health in the United States. She is one of the most renowned personalities of the area. It is a pleasure to have her here, so please welcome Dr. Lynn Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am so proud to have been asked to come and speak with you today. I want to thank Corfo and AmCham and Imagen de Chile, and that's the extent of my Spanish. I apologize very much. But particularly, I'd like to thank Lorena Palamo, whom I met in the United States through Women in Bio, and that just shows how important an organization and how strong women can be when we come together and then we go apart and we plant seeds everywhere we are. And also many thank yous to Isadora for all her help with us while we've been here today. I was especially pleased to be asked to speak with you today about two topics that I feel very passionate about. One, of course, is the science and the business. How do we bring those two together so that we have the greatest advantage and that we can progress the science from the laboratory all the way to the end user? And then, of course, the second passion that I have that we'll talk about today is about how do we advance women's careers so that they can reach the highest level that they want to reach. So let's see if I can do this. No? There we go. So as I mentioned, I'll talk to you today about trying to create opportunities in biotechnology that includes things such as leadership, diversity of thinking. Who will do this work when Chile begins to really commercialize and begins to have more and more success stories? And I'll also talk to you a little bit about a paradox in biotechnology. So, there we go. So how do we set the stage for success? In order to foster innovation and success, we really need to make sure that scientists have the ability, excuse me, to be their most creative. I was very heartened to hear our panel discussions, because so much of what they said I'll be repeating back to you. So hopefully you'll hear it a couple of times then, and you'll really begin to understand that these are truths and not just opinions. But the idea is that we want our scientists to be innovative, we want them to be creative, and if they so desire, we want them to be entrepreneurs. So throughout my career, and I suspect you've observed this as well, there's been a breakdown sometimes between communication with the scientists and the business people. Sometimes, of course, we talk about communication differences between men and women. We talk about all kinds of types of breakdowns in communication. And in order for there really to be good, strong innovation, we need to encourage interdepartmental communication and to respect that there are cultural differences, not just between races or gender, but literally between departments. So we need to learn ways that we can have the business people, the accountants, to appreciate why the scientists are continuing to tweak and tweak and tweak, make those small changes in the science, when in reality now they have goals and objectives and financial restraints that they need to pay attention to. We also need to create a culture within bioorganizations that allows a little bit of failure, certainly to a degree, so that you won't be creative unless you can take a small risk and risk failure. Certainly it can't be repetitive failure, but in order to encourage the most innovation, we really do need this sort of, there we go. One other way to encourage this innovation and such is to look back at the lessons that have been learned in biotechnology and why 95% of biotechnology companies fail. Isn't that a horrible number? So, of course we know it's expensive and there's a lengthy development time, right? Estimates, even a number of years ago, showed that to develop a biopharmaceutical drug could cost as much as $1 billion and could take as many as 10 to 15 years. So that certainly is one reason that it could fail. The science itself might fail. We may not even know the science has failed until they're into clinical trials. That can be years into the development of a company. And a point that we've heard mentioned today in the panel and that I'll come back to is often the inability of the scientist and the founder to let go and let others who have more experience in certain areas begin that commercialization process. So let's talk a bit now about, given what's happened in the biotech industry, which is now almost 50 years old, that's hard to imagine. Chile is in a wonderful position now to look back at what happened from the early stages of biotech, because as you enter biotech, there's now all these 50 years of experience that you can learn from. Wait a minute. Oh, there we go. Okay. So previously, I talked about letting go. And as my colleague Sam spoke earlier and said, venture capitalists might often want their own management team. And some of our panelists talked about ego. It is very difficult for scientists often to let go. I can share a story that I heard a few years ago from a colleague who is a venture capitalist, who told me that he was once working with a scientist who had a breakthrough discovery, and that this was going to be worth billions of dollars. Everyone was very excited about it. The VC offered the funding necessary, but insisted that it be their management system put in place, and the scientist would be asked to be the chief science officer. That scientist could not do it. He did not accept the VC funding for this breakthrough discovery. And by the time I talked to the VC, the scientist had walked away, and that product, that breakthrough discovery, was still not developed. So the key thing, let go of your ego. Permanent whitewater. Jessica, I think, mentioned the turbulent trip, which might be another way of saying permanent whitewater. That was a term coined by Peter Vail from Harvard a number of years ago, describing a highly dynamic, turbulent industry where there is a lot of change, and then sometimes things go very slowly, and sometimes they go very fast. So how do you navigate this? And the point of the people in the kayak, because when I first heard this, I couldn't quite grasp what his point was, and he said to me, imagine that you're a professional kayaker and you're in a level 5 whitewater. If you know what you're doing, you can navigate it. You may have never seen these rocks before, you may have never seen this rapid before, but if you learn the skills, you can survive and even succeed. I'd like to tell you about another story about a colleague that I worked with. One of my jobs is as an executive coach. And a colleague that I had, we renamed his company Camelot because he was so promising, and we called him King Arthur. So he was started as a molecular biologist from a very prominent university. He started a company based on his science. He began to grow the company. It was succeeding. He had products in clinical trials. He went from 1 employee, which was himself, up to about 60 employees. Things changed then. After you get over about 20 employees, it's a little bit more difficult, right? If you're a scientist now and you work in the lab, you may have a collegial attitude. You may just have informal types of communication. Suddenly, there's now 60 employees, and the leader cannot possibly be always informing all 60 people. My King Arthur in this story still could not change, could not adjust. He brought in experts. He had an executive coach. He had a chief medical officer. He had a chief finance officer, et cetera. But he kept second-guessing what they said. And as a result, the company was beginning to stall. His decision-making, while originally was so collaborative, was now being seen as being indecisive. He couldn't let go. He surrounded himself with experts. He couldn't evolve from collaborative to decisive, and frankly, back to collaborative at times. There needs to be an adjustment, an evolution of the leader throughout the different stages of the organization. He didn't understand that communication needed to change. Some of his colleagues were upset. They were feeling left out because he couldn't talk to anyone below the senior team other than very casually and sporadically. Ultimately, what he did was sell the company, and he went and started another company, and then he started another company, and he's been very successful as a serial entrepreneur. I share this with you not to suggest that that's what you should do, but you need to understand that Working in a laboratory, working in a small startup company, working in a company with 100 people, 1,000 people, a Pfizer, requires very different things from you. Whereas originally, when biotech started, all the companies that were started wanted to be FIPCOs, fully integrated pharmaceutical companies. With the lengthy development time and the huge cost, that obviously wasn't going to happen for many of these companies. And so you have to pick, where do you fit in the continuum? Where are you most comfortable and where are you most effective? So I put together some leadership requirements that we've found both from my personal experience and also from research, not just from myself, but from other researchers. It requires, to be successful in permanent whitewater, a visionary leader, and I heard our panel mention that. It's not just stating a vision and posting it on the wall. It's making sure everyone throughout the organization, as it grows, understand what the vision of the company is, why even their small part is playing is a step in that direction. Just as our president in the Camelot case was being seen as non-decisive because he was being so collaborative, and this is something we women need to think about, because often we women, and I include myself here, of course I am a woman, but as collaborative, we want to get everybody's opinion and think about it first. At different stages in the life cycle of the organization, it comes a point when you need to make specific decisions. You need to be able to communicate and put excellent communication in place through the organization. The leader also needs to recognize and appreciate these cultural differences between the different groups. Again, not just between men and women, but between departments where they don't always respect each other's work or even understand the vocabulary. And finally, employees at all levels need to be empowered to make decisions, because as the company grows, the key decision maker, the key leader, can't make every decision. That people need to be able to make decisions that impact their own department. So, wrapping this up a bit, back to the slide of permanent whitewater. Leaders really need to adjust their style. They need to continuously learn and continuously adapt. Peter Vail, who mentioned permanent whitewater, first mentions it in a book called Learning as a Way of Being. In other words, especially as a biotechnologist, you need to be continually understanding, continually changing and adapting. So how do we maximize these opportunities for yourself? The leader needs to surround themselves with experts, they need to trust their lieutenants, and they need to make sure the lieutenants can make their own decisions and not be second-guessed. So who are the experts? We can all, I'm sure you all would know this right away, the functional area experts, the marketing, the regulatory, clinical, but also bringing in consultants who can help guide you in specific areas, such as how do we get the funding, how do we go through clinical trials, and then executive coaches, and that expands too into sponsors and mentors. So that's the part of leadership I wanted to talk to you about, but it ties directly into this concept of diversity of thinking, and gender is part of that diversity of thinking. So good decisions require different ways of thinking, including different opinions and different experiences, and that should be built into the framework and into the DNA of the organization. That if you surround yourself with people who look like you and sound like you and argue in the same ways you do, your decision-making will not be as strong as it could be. So when I think it was you who mentioned diversity or being the only woman in the room, I've been there many, many times. And while this picture probably came before my time, I'm not sure, it still holds true today. That it's often people who all look the same. I don't want to bash all white men. They make great ideas, but it needs to be with a more diverse group. There's been a lot of research that shows that diversity, well, certainly diversity means more women, but it means the research shows that it increases the bottom line of the company, it enhances the company image, there are fewer lawsuits, and the company is viewed as more socially responsible. Further, there's so much research on this, but showing that having at least one woman on the board significantly decreases a company's chance of going out of business. And when we talk about biotech companies failing at a rate of 95%, we know we need every opportunity we can possibly get. And out of Fortune 500 companies, you can read these data yourself, but those that have 3 or more women on the board had a 73% increase, higher return on sales, and a higher 83% return on equity, and an amazing 112% return on invested capital. And yet, we have about 50% of the degrees being awarded in the life sciences are women. So half and half in our classrooms. And I can attest to this from Johns Hopkins, yet they only account for about 12% of the board seats. So what's going on? And this is much less than even other industries, which I think these numbers are about 2 years old, but 16% in other industries. And that really shocked me because, you know, in biotech, we're a bunch of very smart, highly educated people. So you would think that this concept of diversity would have sunk in a little quicker. So how do women position themselves to be on boards? There's another slide I have in a moment that just says network, network, network. 80 to 85% of board seats are filled through networking, who you know, getting out there, coming to these kinds of meetings and talking to each other. And these rules, by the way, work well for men as well. But plan for it. Plan early in your career. In your 30s and early 40s, start thinking, I would like a board position. So making sure you promote yourself, your LinkedIn site is up to date, more and more people are tweeting and Instagram, etc. But you also have to show that you have excellent communication skills, you're good at business and finance. And the big one that women don't do is ask for the position. 2 out of the 3 board seats, 3 different organizations where I either sit or have sat on boards, came because I asked, because I let them know I'm interested, I would like to do this, I think I have something to contribute. And you can also work with a recruiter. There are, in the US, about 15% of board seats are filled by recruiters. So here's my network slide. In the US, we have some women in bio, we have healthcare business women's associates, and everywhere I've heard my colleagues here say finding mentors and finding sponsors. It's not just mentors within your career in terms of helping you advance to the next position, but mentors in how to get placed on boards where the real key decisions are made. Get to know who's already on the board, find what gaps they have, and then find a sponsor, a colleague, a friend who has seen you on other boards or has seen you in action, and have them bring forth your name. I mentioned women in bio, and I heard, I know in my introduction, it talked a little bit about women in bio, and I want to share with you about it because I think that's really something that you in Chile may consider organizing for yourselves. Women in Bio is an organization whose main goal is to help women advance their careers in the life sciences. It was started in about 1992 by 4 women who were going to many events, networking events, and back to the slide with all the men. They were the only 4 women in the room, and they decided we really need something that will support women entrepreneurs. And they began to get together, they met over dinner, they began to invite their friends to come. Ultimately, The organization grew from those 4 women to over 2,000 now. It's all volunteer. Everyone who does anything with women in bio has volunteered through it. It currently now is large enough that there is a paid executive director. But I would really encourage you here in Chile to consider this. I spoke to, and I'm going to put you on the spot because you gave me your card, but Maria Inez Diaz from Nanoderm and Paola Guidetti from Green Biofactory are 2 women here in our audience today who are very excited about the idea of women in bio. And maybe if you found them, if you networked and found them and said, hey, I might be interested, I might be able to work with you to help you, because you can really get overwhelmed with the idea of it, but it can be small and it can be simple and it can grow organically. As I mentioned, Women in Bio was originally intended to support women entrepreneurs. It is now an organization that supports women at all levels of the life sciences, from early in their career, right out of their undergraduate work, all the way through CEOs and women who are in the C-suite. Again, because of the appalling numbers of women on boards, Women in Bio partnered, oops, sorry, my slides are off there. Women in Bio partnered with George Washington University to create a new program called Boardroom Ready that is an application-only program where they've run it twice now, where women apply from all over the United States. They must be at a vice president level or higher. They apply, it's a 5-day program. I believe it's broken in 2 different long weekends, to train to learn how to be attractive to boards and how to be effective board members. Already, 10 of the graduates are on paid positions for corporate boards. This was just a quick photo of the first cohort in 2015, pardon me. So who's going to do all this work when Chile is so successful? It's a chicken and the egg sort of problem, isn't it? If you are successful, you need workers. Workers need jobs. Which comes first? So I think we need to start very early on and getting our kids to understand that it's not just the science that drives biotech. This slide is from a colleague of mine, Moira Gunn, who put this together for a class that she teaches. But it's the science, it's the intellectual property, it's the finance, it's the communications, it's many things. And one last call out for women in bio, there's a group called YWIB, or Young Women in Bio, that targets young women who are 12 to 14 or 15 years old, to get them into biotech companies, to show them what opportunities there are, to begin to get them to see, yes, there may be a place for me in the biotech space. So we very strongly believe in partnerships, in partnering between academia, government, industry. As you're trying to grow your biotech industry, you're seeing here now that it is a collaborative effort. And I think if I said how many here are from academia, how many from government, how many from industry, we would get a pretty good mix of that. So in my last few minutes, I just want to tell you a bit more about Johns Hopkins. My colleague, Emil Wang, talked to you about regulatory. Up until just a few months ago, my job at Johns Hopkins, in addition to being a faculty member, was to run our graduate programs in enterprise, entrepreneurship, and regulatory science. We split that up a bit now, and regulatory science is its own department, which gave me time now to go more into my new area of my job, which is something I've always done, but now is being really pushed more, is international. And we're at Johns Hopkins, we're looking for international partners because we believe that it is a global community, and despite what happens in politics, we all know that we can't just be isolated, that we need to work with our colleagues. So I won't go too long into this. I think I only have a couple of minutes left. But we started our first degree, the Master of Science in Biotechnology, in 1992. It was in DNA Alley, which is a part of Maryland that is approximately, has the same number of biotech companies as Chile does now. So we were in this sort of environment. We were near the National Institutes of Health, the FDA, and we had about 150 companies. We built the program course by course, and that's what I would encourage your educators to consider. It doesn't need to be a full degree. Our MS in biotech is science-based, but they learned early on that, biotech is not just the science. It's all of the other components that we talked about. We began to add new courses. From those courses, as they filled and more students would get on a wait list, we would add more. We began to add concentrations, and from those we began to add new degrees. So you don't need to read the slide, but I put it up to show you. These are all of the different degrees we now have in the Center for Biotech Education, and there's even one that I missed, our newest one, a Master of Science in Individualized Genomics and Health. How do we have this international reach? In 2001, we went online. That was a very difficult trip with our university, who really didn't know that online education could be experiential. It could be highly collaborative. Students network. In fact, I've even had, we're so highly interactive, I've had students say they get to know their classmates better online. I just want to share one last bit with you. The newest degree, and frankly the one of which I am maybe most proud, is the Master's of Biotechnology, Enterprise, and Entrepreneurship. I myself have an MBA, but what I learned from it, and I was a microbiologist, but what I learned from the MBA was a very broad understanding. This MB degree, as we call it, is highly focused, is specifically for those people who don't need additional science but have a science background, and who really want to understand the core functional areas. And I'm very happy that we have Alejandro Bisquert, an entrepreneur and Chilean Corfo member who's here somewhere, who is a student in our MB program. So he's able to work from Chile and do the entire program. We formed a Society of Bioenterprise Education and Research. If any of you are interested, you can go to cyber.bio, but it's a place where universities come together to talk about what are the requirements that entrepreneurs need to know. Because when I launched the MB degree, it was the first in the world, and that was only 2007. I know Cambridge does some work in this area. And at any rate, this year, if you're interested, it will be in June in Karolinska, with Karolinska University. So I mentioned at the beginning about the unique paradox of biotechnologists. My own personal story, I believe, is quite similar perhaps to yours. You start off as a young person wanting to cure disease. I wanted to cure cancer. I went into the laboratory and found that was not where the best use of my abilities were. And through a long series of events, here I am talking with you. You may be the ones that cure cancer. And if any of my words have impacted you to help you do so, then I will be successful, right? So that's our difference in biotechnology. It can often be difficult for scientists and researchers to evolve to meet these financial goals and these steps and timelines that they must. So what do? Success means you need to continually adapt. You need to be able to succeed in permanent whitewater. Surround yourself with experts and include a diversity of opinion and decision makers, because then you will be successful. Thank you very much.
We would like to thank the presentation of Dr. Lynn Johnson Langer, who is a referent, well-known reference in the United States. Her vision is quite valuable for everyone that is present in this conference. And our final invitation to close the event today is for the International Advisor of the Biotechnology Program in Corfo, Dr. Fernando Martinez, to come to the stage. This is a brief presentation. Dr. Fernando Martinez is a degree of medicine at the Universidad de Chile and University of Rome in Italy. He had his residency in pediatrics in the University of Rome, specialized in pediatric pneumology. He was a director of the prestigious center, multidisciplinary center, Bio5 in Arizona, and he's been a professor of the Faculty of Medicine, Swift Magnier, and University of Arizona. Likewise, he's a researcher and doctor who heads different projects that are associated to the study of infant asthma. He has written more than 200 articles in prestigious scientific magazines, and he has provided lectures in more than 150 countries. Welcome, Doctor. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank AmCham and Imagen Chile for the opportunity to be able to speak today. I felt at home because most of the problems that we talked about today, I have them here right now, the same issues. Just to tell you a little bit about what we were talking about before, I have a product that 20 years ago I've been thinking about developing. It's like my fourth son. I have 3 sons, so and probably in the next years I will have to deliver it or give him away. And as we said before, it's one of the most difficult things in the world when we have had something that we love as a child, and then we have to give it away because we do not know what to do to make it enter the market. And so the asthma product. There's a large company that's interested in this asthma product. Now, it's quite interesting evidence in what we're doing, and we're all together in this now. As was mentioned in the previous presentations, for many years, for 7 years, I was director of a translational center, and a year and a half or 2 years ago, the executive vice president of Corfo, Eduardo Vitran, asked me that, together with a group of people in Corfo, asked me to start thinking about what the next step could be in the development of a national plan for biotechnology. What we decided, as mentioned by the Vice President, was to conduct a diagnosis. I will go quite fast because we're late. You've heard about the diagnosis already, but just to conduct the diagnosis, this was on site. We traveled throughout the country, in Santiago, many places, and we obtained many data, we talked with many people, and these are briefly the conclusions that have already been mentioned. Chile is a country that is doing quite well with regard to intellectual production and in life sciences and in life sciences in general, and sciences in general. Now, Chile is the second in the production of articles that are published in international magazines after Brazil. It is well over Argentina and Colombia. Universities produce professionals, but they produce publications that are published. There is science. The problem is that together with science, if you want to transform science into a product, we have only reached, if everything that is done is just to produce a concept, a basic idea, and that first step where you see there as universities, centers, and startups, there's still practically 3/4 of the path of the way to go. The difficulty in Chile, what we have seen, is that those 3/4 of the road they're not structured. We don't have the centers that allow whoever has an idea to take that idea to the person that has the money, to present it for the person that has the money, the investor, to understand that, or present it to someone in the industry that has a problem or an issue that technology might be able to solve. And that, which was the same that we tried to solve with the institute that I was directing or heading in the United States, that's a main issue, as mentioned this morning by the BP. Now, there is an industry in Chile. An industry has been developed in Chile. This is a small map of what we have. Briefly, we have angel investors, we have companies that are formed already. This is a structure that already exists. This is much more than what we had 5 years ago. But this is quite isolated of the needs of the productive apparatus. Now, how do we do this to merge? How do we do to merge this with more production of science and knowledge in the university with the how do we merge this with the productive apparatus that's a challenge that we have. Now, the great amount of the investment in life sciences conducted in Chile that is done with the idea of it being applied, that is conducted by the state. You have seen this graph before. I will not go into further detail. Private investment is quite low. Here you see in livestock and agriculture. This is in thousands, millions of pesos. That's a little bit more than $5 million. In health services, this is in more than 1 year, 1,700 million pesos. They're quite small amounts in investments from private agents or stakeholders. I do not blame them. With the system that we already have as it is today, one cannot know if the private does not know if he's getting into something that is quite risky and what the probabilities are for that to translating into reality, because there's no mechanism that is producing my idea for whoever's producing the ideas to translate into a project for whoever has money to invest, to know what are the things that will be done, when an assessment will be conducted, etc., etc. We have to conduct a system. We have to create a system in which that is done. Since I have the experience on this, I am saying that this works if we do it. And the result of the diagnosis is that we have not made it that far with regard to the fact that knowledge is transformed into products. I will not go into details. This has been said before. In summary, what are the gaps? There's a lack of scaling up capacities, validation, and technology. I've mentioned this quite a lot. The incorporation of standards, a lack of human capital in bio businesses. There's people that know how to conduct sciences real well, but there's not many of them know how to transform science into products, with funding lines that do not respond to the development of the projects, and regulations that are not aligned with the new innovation technologies. So what are the solutions for this? Because it's not enough. Chileans, we have we tend, and when we live abroad, we know, we tend to conduct great diagnosis, but there's no specific and clear solutions for them. One of the things that we have in this project, there are solutions that are quite specific and clear, and we have expressed these in 3 different aspects.
In 3 aspects. First, we have business venture and innovation, facilitating conditions, and finally, human capital and critical infrastructure. And if we can move in the last few years or now, from 3 years on, we will create the basis for a great biotechnological industry in this country. And our vision is to position Chile as a pole for research. I'm not going to say this because this is a vision that, an optimistic and very ambitious vision. Where are the axes? I've said innovation, business venture, facilitating conditions, and human capital. And for business venture, we required biotechnology, because if people have money and want to invest, they need to know what that investment is. So anyone who would like to invest and gain investment, then they have to pitch their project in the best way possible. Facilitating conditions. It is important that the government, the state, regulates in such a manner that promotes innovation. That is not the case today. I have a great clinical trial of $28 million given by the U.S. states. It couldn't be possible for me to have a center here in Chile, because it would be impossible to me to indemnify the families, because I would have worked with little children. Public goods, infrastructure, critical one, transversal and human capital. And I'm going to talk about transnational platforms really quickly. This is very simple. Corfo investment, for example, for the needs of the company, to give the possibility to the company to obtain funding by Corfo to associate with scientists and develop a project. Corfo already does this, but we need more, and to promote private investment on the foundations that what we already say, a de-risk condition in order for companies to effectively invest in Chile. The second foundation, habilitating conditions. We need to create conditions focused on innovation and to put regulatory framework for areas that are already defined. We have advanced regulation, medical devices, improvement techniques. And this is essential because Chile could have a lot of products that are there now, products that could solve essential problems in medicine and agriculture and in livestock industry. But since they are not yet identified, nobody can invest in them. Among the facilitating conditions, we have endemic genetic conditions, improve clinical conditions, and we need to change the current law. And finally, and very important one, I'm not saying most important one, but very important, is critical infrastructure. Because one of the problems I've noted, and that I saw too in Arizona, but everything is everywhere. So many efforts, so many enthusiasm, but there is not point of reference. There is no central point where people could gather, where you have the possibility to present a project, where is the possibility to have international experts to read these projects, to criticize these projects, and to help development for technologies that are now being developed for the science that we now have. We need to create a reference point, a central point that organizes, not to replace each one. Lynn said very well that every science, even applied science, is based on the individual with capacity, and that needs to continue in universities or wherever you are, and in private sector. But we need to organize in such a manner that they can get together. We need to create a gathering space, and that is essential because that is the manner in which you can unite 1, 2, and 3 with 8 and 9. That is the only matter that you can move from 3 to 8. That is passing by 4, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you try to make that jump, that leap, but you have to move through every stage. And that you need to train specialists that know about those stages. And I need to put a license to a product that I'm in love with because I don't have the capacity or ability to take it to the next level. I'm going to have to deliver it, to let it go in order for somebody to move through 6 and 7 in order to go to 8 and 9. And that requires a gathering space. And that could be an institute, it could be a center, it could be even a virtual platform. But we need organization and coordination that they could bring all efforts that are now existent. And I believe that the journey has already begun. An assessment evaluation was done, and we had 90% of everyone involved in biotechnology. We presented in more length than what I did today, but every representative of this group was there. They had the possibility to contribute, and what they contributed was greatly useful. And that shows that when you have a gathering point, you can promote every capacity of each group, and this is the starting point of a path that could be a very virtuous one because it offers participation opportunity, the opportunity to have projects that you could translate into reality, but we have a possibility to coordinate efforts that are already there and that could be put into the service of this great purpose of creating knowledge through biotechnology in Chile. So thank you very much. Okay, we would like to thank the closing words of the International Assessor for the Biotechnology Program that already proposed the challenges and the conclusions of those days of work that we can see here on the screen. A challenge that we consider is especially focused on young people that are present here in the event. It's been a very interesting day, a moment that we would like to have, please, for all the exponents to come to the stage. All the speakers, please go to the stage so we can take a picture. Everyone from the morning session, Gabriela, please, all of the participants in all the panels, speakers from the early sessions and the afternoon sessions, please. Is Eduardo here? Maybe he already left the event. Can you move forward in front of the table, please? In front of the table. Okay, can we wait for a few minutes? Because I think Eduardo is coming. So we're taking this photograph, and please wait for a few seconds because Eduardo Beltrán is coming to take the picture with us. Okay, 1 second because there's a person missing in the photograph. With this round of applause so they smile for the photograph. We would like to thank your attendance today. To each one of your experiences has been key in order to see what are the challenges and opportunity that we have for biotechnology in Chile and in Latin America, as was stated here today. The event has been a milestone for the exchange of experiences for key experiences of the biotechnology ecosystem of entrepreneurs and for the internalization of innovation ecosystem and science of life in the American system. Thank you very much for being here today, Imagen de Chile, Corfo, and especially to the Chilean Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much.